The ancient creature menacingly stared at the little panda straight in the eyes, while the recently healed kid was frozen in fear. The size difference between the two beasts was like heaven and earth. The ancient beast then stared weirdly, opening its maw. After absorbing the Leviathan monarch, it had absorbed some of the orca's physical qualities, including its mouth orientation. Iron Eater Panda was in more than just a little bit of trouble now. After searching high and low for his target, never in his wildest dreams would he have expected that such a massive beast would be able to perfectly hide underground. Without turning around and keeping his eyes on the ancient beast, he told the kid to run and not think about him. This is what he came for after all. He journeyed all the way from the Misty Mountains to have an ultimate showdown with a beast. The kid did not know how to respond to that ridiculous statement. He did not even know what was about to happen. All he could see was the boundless determination flowing out of the panda's eyes and body. When the kid finally overcame the fear that was keeping his legs stuck to the ground, and seeing how strong the panda's resolve was, he was finally able to turn around and run for his life. What was left in the middle of the ruined metropolis was the little panda. It seems like these days, his carefree smile has vanished altogether. A serious scowl painted his face most of the time, especially now. On the other side of the conflict was the transcendental fourth-order ancient beast of unknown origins and boundless strength. It was a mismatch in not only size and cultivation level, but also pure destructive power. Even just the pressure coming out of the ancient beast's howl had almost knocked the little panda off his feet. Things are really not looking good before any sort of clash even happens. The pressure of its spiritual power is making it hard for him to breathe. It was on another level altogether. It was even stronger than what he felt from his boss, the God Tree. With its spiritual power that can be compared to a bottomless abyss, this is the most powerful being that the little panda had ever had the misfortune of encountering. This is the real power of a transcendent fourth-order level creature. Suddenly, all the courage that he planned to push forward was starting to crumble as the spiritual pressure gripped him. He was prepared for the worst, but doubts of surviving this ordeal are starting to spread wider in his mind. After the onslaught of spiritual pressure, the ancient creature did not waste any time to continue this one-sided battle by swiftly extending one of its thick tendrils that were infinitely bigger than the little panda forward. He tried his hardest to stay in the moment and pay attention to the incoming attack as if his life depended on it. That's because his life really did depend on it. One hit from these things would either heavily injure him or worse. But this first casual tendril attack was not too hard to evade. The little panda was a formidable fighter after all. Dodging the first salvo was easily achievable. The real problem comes at the second incoming attack from another one of the monster's countless thick and wide tendrils, ready to go to Pound Town. He was stuck in midair with no platforms or surfaces to use as a pivot point. The little panda was pretty much a sitting duck against the lightning-fast strike. So he wanted to do the next best thing, blocking while activating the petrification ability, turning his body into stone and improving his defense by a ton. This was the little panda's best move. Taking this tendril on with just grit and determination would have likely sent him to the hospital or worse. He was proud of his petrification. It even came in handy with the Nine Tails spar. But trying to defend against a fourth-order transcendent beast is a whole new ball game, and making yourself hard might not cut it. Despite deploying the best defensive maneuver that he has, the little panda still ended up with some nasty internal injuries that made him throw up bile and blood because of that 1-2 strike combo. Seeing as these tendril attacks were way too strong to directly tank, the little panda's natural course of action would be to dodge and dodge as much as he can. It was as if the ancient beast has read his mind and pulled out all the stops. It started utilizing more tendrils to cover more area of effect, limiting the panda's movements under the threat of instant death in one wrong move. Even if it was facing just a tiny, insignificant, cuddly, and fuzzy enemy, this creature did not dare underestimate the opponent. It was going ham with all the tendril attacks, piercing the already ruined ground of the metropolis in hopes of landing a kill shot. Away from all the action, A two-man media team had bravely emerged from the rubble to cover the latest ancient creature updates. The cameraman was hesitant to go closer in fear of getting spotted and killed, but the newscaster has already locked in to get the perfect shot for the exclusive scoop material. When the camera started rolling, she started explaining what was on the frame. The colossal creature that has been lying dormant for the past few days has reappeared to seemingly engage in combat with another beast for unknown reasons. The leading speculation was that the fight is territorial in nature. After the dust settled out in the middle of the battlefield, the camera finally captured the brave little panda going up against horrors beyond human comprehension. The newscaster hyped up the sight of an iron-eating beast, as this panda species is not foreign to humans, especially Jia or City. Under all the ruins of the once sprawling metropolis was the evacuation center, where those that were lucky enough were being sheltered. They were watching the broadcast as the caster assumed that the country has finally sent a rescue squad, but that wouldn't make much sense as there's only one panda in the scene. One of the panda caretakers and an injured panda beast were also watching the broadcast, asking themselves which team that little beast was from. The regular folks that have been seeking refuge in this facility watched as another battle raged on, but the hopes in their eyes have already dwindled to minuscule levels. From what they can see, the little panda does not stand a chance. In terms of size alone, it already looks like a hopeless endeavor. Some were outraged, thinking that the country would only send such a tiny creature to get them out of this dire situation when they have more powerful and capable characters on their roster. The sight of the little panda is just not cutting it. On the other side of the shelter was two familiar-looking individuals. The older gentleman could not believe his eyes as he called to the peach-colored haired Xiao Ai to look at the broadcast. Both were zookeepers that are near and dear to the heart of the iron-eater panda. They would recognize that little guy no matter what happens. Xiao Ai was revealed to have a nasty claw scar on her face. She looked at the monitor, and the first thing that registered to her attention was the little panda's unique fur color. There was no doubt about it, the little guy gritting his teeth and facing off against the most powerful creature that humanity has set their sights on was the once tiny and still tiny Chi-Zi. After seeing the familiar flute that Chi-Zi was wearing on his waistband, Xiao Ai's tears started flowing out of her golden eyes. That scaredy-cat panda was back, and he is trying to protect everyone. It was about time to stop using defensive and evasive maneuvers. He had gotten used to the speed of the tendrils, and it's about time to go ball mode and do some damage to the ancient beast. Traveling at unbelievable speeds, little panda looked like a cannonball meteor heading directly for the monstrosity. His movements were too fast, and the momentum he had gathered in a short amount of time was staggering. His ball attack eventually culminated in an attack that managed to stretch the monster's thick skin. But that was as far as he could go. All that velocity and force was not even enough to pierce through the outer layer of the monster's thickness. Little Panda's ultimate attack ended up in an embarrassing bounce out. And to make matters worse, this ancient creature really was not pulling any punches just because the enemy is in a vastly different weight class. It actually pulled out the sonic attack it used to wipe out a Federation naval fleet. As a result, little panda experienced the devastating vibrations inside his body while leaving multiple cuts on the outside. With nothing to hold or stop his momentum in midair, the full speed of the resultant fall made a crater significantly bigger than his tiny body. Little panda was quite resilient. Normal humans or beasts would have been done at this point, but he was not invincible. The reading is continuing in his head, making everything seem fuzzy. His internal injuries were getting worse by the second. With that sonic boom attack just now, the vision in his eyes is starting to get hazy, and the ringing in his ears is growing stronger and more painful. His nose was not exempt from the after effects. It was starting to get increasingly hard to breathe. He just could not believe that he was getting beaten this badly and hopelessly. He, who had to draw with his big sister Ninetails, the strongest beast on the Misty Mountains. With his current abilities and level, he can barely stay conscious against a transcendent fourth-order creature that is not leaving him even a tiny bit of room to counterattack. He inwardly asked himself what he should do at this point. The Abacus watching from the safety of the shelter watched with bated breath. All of them were under the same expectation that the little panda will probably die sooner rather than later. Iron Eater Panda was also having the same thoughts. He was already asking if this is how it ends for him. It was like he was back in the four sides of his enclosure, tiny and vulnerable. Once again, he can't do anything. For some reason, he started recalling a conversation he had with Xiao Ai about how much she loves this city. Not only does this city have the people that she loves, but this is also the place that she calls home for as long as she could remember. If fate was up to Xiao Ai, all she wanted to do was to stay in Jia or city for the rest of time. That same kind woman with a quaint little dream dared to jump down the little panda's enclosure in the middle of an awakened animal rampage with nothing but a regular rake against a newly awakened beast. Back then, little panda saw the look of fear in her darkening golden eyes. He did not know what to do, so he did what he always does. He abandoned her and ran away, only thinking of himself. Because of little panda's fear, he left the person who loved him the most and the person that he loved the most. He shamelessly ran away while Xiao Ai faces an unknown terror by herself. He knows that she must have felt so desperate at that time. While he just turned around and ran with his proverbial tail tucked between his legs, he was only thinking about himself. He was a coward. Thinking about Xiao Ai's beautiful face still leaves him with a painful heart. After everything that happened, he no longer has the face to appear before her. Little Panda journeyed all the way to the Mall of the Beast thinking that this is the least he could do to atone for his sin of putting fear above love and care. Under this dark, starry night, he intends to dodge, tank, and counterattack against the countless tendril attacks that the beast unleashes upon him. The ancient beast noticed something different about its tiny enemy. It thought that this freak show was about to get wrapped up in just one more typical tendril attack. But no, somehow, someway, little panda found the strength inside of him to stop an attack from the terrifying tendril of this monstrosity. The little guy is done running now. With a renewed vigor and a perceptible leap in his power level, little panda declared for all to hear that he's going to kick this ancient beast out of this city that Xiao Ai loves.
You sure about that?
From the vast lands of Australia, this entirely new and unknown creature emerged and wreaked havoc across the entire continent. After that, it traveled along the sea to reach the Federation. The beast that appeared this time is the highest ranked creature in the history of the world. The Federation has already prepared to mobilize its entire military force all at once. They are committed to deploying forces 5 times bigger than when they confronted the God Tree. It is not an understatement to say that the whole world is closely watching this crisis unfold. They all fervently hope the Federation, as the world's second largest military power, would be able to resolve this incident. But the result was extremely disheartening for not just the Federation, but for humanity as a whole. 250,000 troops were completely annihilated. Along with the civilians that were unfortunate enough to get caught in the insanity and fail to escape, the total death toll has hit an all-time high of 570,000. By the 6th day of the ancient beast's rampage, that number has risen to approximately 650,000. Everywhere it has gone, it has left a wake of destruction and death. By the 15th day of its terror, the death toll has reached 710,000. Just a little bit more than a week later on the 23rd day, the number of fatalities has reached 830,000. And up to today, the monster was still not showing signs of slowing down. It crushed, devoured, and killed, making the death toll soar to the head-splitting number of 1.96 million in total. Being a transcendent fourth-order ancient creature, it is undisputedly the world's most dangerous beast right now. The Surveillance Bureau still has not recovered from all the losses they've been accumulating from the God Tree and Misty Mountain forces, and now they have to deal with an even more destructive force of nature. Miss Director has one question in mind. She was confused as to why there is a lone panda in the news feed when the 7th unit known as the Iron Knight's Panda has been supposedly wiped out. Today was not just another typical day in the Surveillance Bureau office, as they have an extraordinary guest, the leader of the Federation himself. His face was gaunt with stress. The Federation leader looks as though he has not been sleeping at all. Who would be able to do so when his country is getting bloodied and ruined under his watch? Going up to the viewing deck and observing the surveillance feeds of the Bureau, it's starting to look like the big boss was here to take over. There is just one searing question in his mind that he wanted to ask Miss Director's professional opinion on. He wanted to know if that unknown little panda can win against the monster that is actively bringing the Federation to the edge of extinction. By the savage and bloodthirsty look in the little panda's eyes despite all the heavy injuries, he looks like he would not lose in the battle of just pure willpower. He recalled his conversation with the god of tree before he decided to make the arduous journey to Jiak City. The boss asked him if he really can't beat Nine Tails. In all honesty, the little panda wasn't sure either until they do a rematch with no holds barred. All he knows is that as he is now, the progress he has been making is too slow to surpass her in level. So, he wanted to ask the god of tree if he knows of any way to instantly become stronger. Usually you thought for a second. The answer to this question is complicated and hard to say. What he knows for sure is that living creatures store their spiritual power in their hearts. Normally, one can only use 30% of their full spiritual power. To use the entire 100% you have stored, shattering the limiter in your heart is a necessity. This will let the spiritual power flow into every cell in one's body. That is the way in that the little panda might be able to temporarily gain power beyond his level. But the god tree warned him that it can be very dangerous and not to ever try it. At that time, the Iron Eater Panda just flashed his usual playful and confident smile while reassuring his boss that he won't ever go beyond his limit. He even promised to never use that lethal technique even if he died. Yet here he is in front of an insurmountable enemy, trying to unlock the full potential in his heart with great difficulty. The more he pushes himself forward, the more the technique was looking more effective. The ancient creature could not care less about stopping an insignificant ant from doing his cute little power-up. But there came a time when even the most powerful beast has started feeling that there is an abnormal surge in power on the enemy's side. With blood flowing out from his various wounds and out of his mouth, the little panda has gone all out. Regardless of injuries, he's at peak strength form. 4 tendrils immediately came flying out to test and maybe even stop the fuzzy beast altogether. From 4, it turned into more. The ancient creature wasn't playing. It wanted undead. That was when the Iron Eater Panda exhibited another one of his bizarre abilities. He froze the tendrils solid from the ice manipulation he got for eating a ton of spirit crystals. He followed this surprise crowd control technique with another one of his meteoric air times. When he finally got enough altitude, the little guy went at it again, using his own body as a weapon. Cannonball of some sorts. He rammed against the beast. This time, he didn't just bounce off pathetically. He actually made the strongest beast in history bleed internally, throwing up blood in the process. This scene nearly made every human watching the broadcast erupt in cheers. The Iron Eater Panda wasn't satisfied with just inflicting some minor internal bleeding that can be shrugged off, so he scraped up just right below the monster's mouth. In the Surveillance Bureau, the one in charge of spiritual power monitoring alerted everyone that the Iron Eater's level is rising rapidly, from 90,000 to 97,000 in a blink of an eye with no signs of slowing down. They can only grit their teeth, not daring to blink lest they miss something as the fight was raging on. They hope that the panda can win somehow. Right now, this is not just a Federation issue. The entire world is watching their every move. The survival of humanity largely depends on this battle. The ancient creature was quite limited in its arsenal, so it kept on coming back to its trusty tendril attacks. This time, the panda won't just awkwardly dodge or petrify himself to deal with the incoming attack. He wanted to meet it with his own fist. The result shocked everyone. The first time in the fight, the panda was on top in a contest of limbs. He might have wounded the tendrils gravely, but it came at the cost of injuring his attacking arm. The physique of a transcendent fourth-order creature cannot be underestimated. Its toughness is simply out of this world. Its toughness was only one of the traits that you need to worry about. You also have to keep the volume and speed, which it can dish out damage in mind. The iron-eater panda is in war mode. There is no playing defense here. He was down to fight a fence with a fence of his own. And even when up against a few tendrils, he still managed to redirect and neutralize them into multiple directions. Its tendrils being neutralized were the least of the beast's worries. The little panda had gone nuts and shredded the tendrils, leaving stumps and wounds. It took a lot from the tiny panda to accomplish this impressive feat. His body was covered in bloody wounds, and fatigue is starting to catch up. To make matters worse, the creature is even up on the tendril plan. It's time to throw all tactics away and just go with the good old bite and chew method. It gnawed down on the little panda, making the ground and the nearby buildings collateral damage from dealing with such a little guy. The evacuees watching the broadcast did not dare to speak at that point as their expressions collectively darkening. They think that the panda beast has been killed by that chomp. In the surveillance bureau, the first one to notice that something was amiss is the Federation head. It was true that the ancient creature has swallowed the tiny panda in one gulp, but once you observe a little closer, a mass of bright energy was starting to glow from its insides. And then, the next thing you know, the iron-eater panda was already blazing out into the sky, burning the creature's insides and mouth in the process. That daring escape plan was quite effective. The creature's eyes has turned completely white, either in pain or something else. The iron-eater panda has gotten off scot-free from almost being eaten whole. That was all thanks to his Crimson Lotus solar flare sphere reaching its maximum temperature and intensity. The brave two-person media crew that dared to film this fight were speechless. The newscaster tried her best to console herself, but the only way she could describe what was happening up front was that it looked like the sun has descended. Panda yelled at the creature to count itself lucky to witness such a technique in its last moments. What he has in store is a technique even the Nine Tails didn't have the chance to experience. Today, he intends to make this overgrown freak have a taste of what looks like the wrath of the sun itself. Little Panda continued accumulating scorching energy that rivaled that of a star. His injuries thus far were grave, but that's not stopping him from shouting at the ancient creature to go and die. When he finally unleashed the ungodly amount of fiery energy, the ancient beast blew once again. This time, he had combined his spinning attack with his accumulated blaze in a powerful attack. From one side to another, the beast could not keep up and kept on getting wounded and cauterized. Little Panda had never pushed himself this hard, but the little fellow looks like he might really do the impossible. After he had finally gained enough momentum, Little Panda went wild and pierced through all the beast's thick skin in multiple angles. Blood and skin flew all over the place as the disastrous beast lets out a painful howl. This is the first time in months since the monstrosity has been forced to such dire straits. They had no room to fight back at all. Even humans watching from afar were starting to think that victory might be within grasp. No one dared to divert their attention from the screen. The hope of mankind lies in this decisive battle. From being hopeless to seeing a glimmer of being saved, every human watching could not help but cheer the little panda on. They want more attacks to the point of killing the creature. They wanted beasts to do their job and chase it out of their land. Some watched on their smartphones, gritting their teeth. Some watched the online stream like the zookeepers cheering on Cheesy. At this point, all that they could see was the creature failing to defend or evade against the meteor-like attacks of the little guy. Blood continued to be drawn, was starting to look worse for the ancient being. Iron-eater Panda held one sentiment in his heart throughout all this. Jia, or city, was very pretty in the past, and this overgrown monster shouldn't have come here. Despite having some bad memories in the past, the little guy wanted to protect this place with everything that he has. Even if that meant using his own body as a weapon while he outduels the beast. Little Panda jumped up into the sky. He started looking more like a star in the middle of the night sky. The next thing you know, he was falling, exploding at what looks like a nuclear level. The media team kept a safe distance, but even they were almost swept by the impact that the little guy brought down. They didn't expect a shockwave to reach so far. Thankfully, the camera was alright. As the flash and dust of the destruction that Little Panda unleashed started settling down, Everyone was left to look at a shocking sight. Everyone watching the live broadcast collectively felt a chill go down their spines. The look of worry and surprise were painted on the zookeepers' faces, especially Xiaoai. The same thing goes for the Surveillance Bureau Director and the Federation leader. Despite all the valiant efforts to try and subdue the ancient monster, the little panda still ended up in the grasp of its terrifying tendrils. Humanity watched as their little hope gets dangled bloodied and beaten up in the air. They already expected that this might be a possibility, but the hope they felt when the little panda went hard was there. No one even knows what or who can possibly defeat such a fearsome global threat. The Federation leader is getting extremely frustrated. He felt powerless with all the recent failures. Misdirector knew this and just chose to shut up. Back in the battlefield, the ancient beast intended to crush the little furry fellow like a bug with his tendril, but he was just too resilient even at death's door. Little Panda already knew that the odds were not in his favor at all. Right now, he doesn't even know how many of his bones have been broken. He had also exhausted the life essence that God Tree has given him. He started thinking that this must have been what the human force felt when they went up against the boss. He felt devastated and powerless in front of such an ungodly creature that seemed indestructible. Meanwhile, the little kid that he saved and managed to run all the way to the media team. The cameraman instinctively turned the camera to the child. The boy started crying and begging for anyone and everyone to save that panda somehow. That little guy saved his life, and all the little panda wanted to do was meet his old friend. He doesn't want to die at all. That message might not mean much to everyone else, but it meant the world to Xiaoai, now that she knows that her old friend was going this far just to be with her again. She desperately screamed at the screen for little panda to run away. Even though her pleas wouldn't reach little panda's ears, she just wanted him to be a little selfish at this time and run. His old feeble and helpless self was surfacing back up again. He kept internally repeating that if he doesn't run, he will surely die. But when he remembers the beautiful and brave zookeeper calling out his name, he felt unstoppable. He's no longer the weak and cowardly panda that would run at the slightest sign of danger. He knows that Xiaoai has been watching this battle, and he wanted to prove that this time was different. This time, the fire in his heart has not and will never be extinguished. He will not run away. This time, little panda won't give in to the nagging feeling of weakness like he's always done. He'll do this for the sake of saving Xiaoai and the city that she loves. Even every single bone in his body shatters, he will fight on. Little Panda screamed out, letting his voice be heard by his friend. With blood spewing from his mouth with all the internal damages, he vowed to never run away again. Xiaoai's tears started pouring out. It was as if the little panda heard her pleas and replied with a stronger conviction. When spirit energy appeared, humans started the widespread massacre of beasts. 2 years later, they witnessed a beast willing to risk its life in a fight to the death with the most powerful threat in the world with their own eyes. Little Panda remembered the aftermath of the first lion attack. He remembered sobbing at the sight of Xiaoai's injured arm. She explained that when someone is trying to protect something important, they always spread their arms unconsciously. They do it even if it means sacrificing one's own life without hesitation. Xiaoai finally understood that she's the one that the tiny helpless panda wanted to protect. Even with all the wounds and broken bones, Cheesy has raised both arms, prepared to take on the most powerful being on the planet. Reports say that at 5:30 p.m. of that same day, the little panda has been defeated, life or death unknown. At the last moments of the fight, Cheesy could not help but remember all the times that he and Xiaoai stared at the sunset while he listened to her talk about everything. At the moments when it looked like his consciousness had left him, Cheesy still held his arms open to protect what's important to him. He knew full well that this is as far as he could go. He had no means of resisting as the ancient monster gently slithered around and took him limb by limb. It then raised his whole body up in the air, preparing to do some unspeakable things. Its red and menacingly bleeding eyes stared at the unconscious panda that almost gave the most powerful beast a run for its money. Everyone watched as the energy in the scene shifted to a more sinister and malicious scene. Humanity had already accepted that one tiny panda was not going to be enough to save them, but their attentions were still drawn to what was happening in the broadcast. Just as everyone had expected, the ancient beast opened its gaping maw, ready to do the same thing that it did to the more powerful Leviathan monarch. Xiao could not handle it anymore. She screamed as hard as she could as tears poured out uncontrollably while she shouted Cheesy's name. Little Panda had succumbed to his severe injuries. He was back to being that defenseless zoo animal back then. Then, the ancient beast finally chomped down, swallowing him whole along with the earthy platform with no mercy. Back in the Misty Mountains, Qinggong has brought the projector set to show the God Tree what was happening in Jia City. Watching that beast devour the ninth brother of his trusty subordinates awakened something inside Yu Ziyu. Xiao Qing's soul is back after digging through some information regarding the little panda's involvement in this mess. Jia City is the city where Qizi, the little Iron Eater panda, was originally born. There were about 8 people in the zoo that essentially raised ninth brother. Yu Ziyu connected that the Xiao that the little guy mentioned must be one of them. A list of people that escaped the city does not include any of the zoo's staff, and they are not on the casualty list either. The next thing that Yu Ziyu asked was how long will it take for them to travel to Jia City from these northern regions. Xiao Qing answered that it would take about a month. Considering the time of Cheesy's departure a month ago, the timing of the fight with the ancient being was consistent. Meanwhile, the higher-ups of the Federation were back in their little meetings once again. They were talking about how the little panda that fought valiantly wasn't a member of the Iron Corps, but an escaped panda from Jia City instead. His shouting caregiver, Xiao Ai's name, was confirmation of that. The Federation leader couldn't believe that a beast would go that far to save a human. Everyone was thinking about one thing only, the progress of the rescue operation. But there's been no progress so far, given that the land is completely sealed off. The entire city has been completely isolated from all angles. Even heavy explosives can't destroy the massive, spiked platforms that the monster conjured up. They tried to use rescue helicopters, but the beast just easily shot them down from the skies. God Tree represents the opposite of humanity's incompetency with this situation. He wanted to gather his forces and attack directly from the front. He intends to personally break down that wall. The Federation's only hope is the Dragon Corps. These special forces, consisting of the country's top-tier Transcendent, is their final hope. But they are going to need a whole month before being able to join the fray. Even for Yu Ziyu, the travel time of one whole month to face the monstrosity is just way too long. Every day that either the humans or the Misty Humans delay, the more dangerous the situation becomes. Speeding things up is a top priority. God Tree intends to go in and protect the people stuck inside, especially the little panda's family. As for the ancient creature, there's no question about it. It's kill or be killed. If there's a slim possibility that their ninth brother's still alive, they must rescue him. Both leaders of the Federation and the Misty Mountains have set their timeline of operations to be scheduled 10 days from now. Humans plus beasts going up against the unknown. Misty Mountains will go all out. All the fearsome beasts on the roster will be coming. It will be a guaranteed bloodbath. Back in Jia City, Xiao Ai had almost lost her mind. She took the sniper rifle, wanting to leave the evacuation shelter to face the monster herself, even though she knew that anything she fires out would be completely and utterly useless. She reasoned that if little Cheesy was not afraid of death, then she has no right to be. There is no way that she can stay in this damn place anymore. Even if she doesn't make it, she intends to take the shot. Xiao Ai would rather die than do nothing at all to avenge her little buddy. But before she could even get out of this hidden facility, the ground started shaking uncontrollably. It felt like an earthquake, and a big one at that. But it did not originate from tectonic plates or anything. This earthquake came from the sheer force of the ancient creature's roar. It swept through the city like a calamity. The intensity of such roar made the ground shake and the nearby infrastructures to get destroyed. The ancient creature was not just roaring for nothing though, it sounded like it was undergoing immense pain as a strange and almost alien green and black goo started oozing out of its mouth. As if trying to desperately get this mysterious substance out of its system, the creature spat out the unsettling goo. It hit a nearby ruined skyscraper and stuck to one of its sides. The next thing you know, thick tendrils different from what it was using to attack started coming out of the monster's body. More of those spiked platforms also started appearing, this time in the middle of Jia City instead of the outskirts. The first ones to see what was really happening were the media team that was bravely covering the biggest event of human history thus far. They watched as the ancient creature underwent some bizarre processes before what it was trying to do became terrifyingly obvious. The beast that was already at the peak of fourth order transcendence has transformed into a pupa. So you're telling me that guy was just the baby form? The Federation has finally assigned a scientific name for this enormous anomaly. It has been derived from its place of origin and its domineering behavior. They have officially named it the Destruction Beast Australith, a mysterious new creature born from the land down under. They really decided on a very literal name. While the Federation leader was receiving this update, another one of their intelligence officers barged in with the bad news regarding the latest update on Jia City, a fresh footage of what the Destruction Beast was doing. Everyone watched the recording, and there was no doubt about it, that already powerful being has gone and wrapped itself up like a caterpillar waiting to be reborn. They thought that things could not get any worse previously, but now, an opponent that they could not even fathom has completely left them in the dust and started evolving. One thing's for sure is that if they don't kill this pupa soon, the whole world is fated to be doomed. The green and black alien goo that the Australith threw up before wrapping itself up with a cocoon started sliding off the ruined skyscraper in an unnatural manner. Inside the goo, bizarre movements can be seen as it started to wriggle and break apart in odd shapes. When you look at it closely, you would see that the alien goo was alive, or rather, it contains some weird life forms inside. Beasts of all shapes from serpentine to bear-like, all sharing the same body composition from that alien goo, have spawned to protect Australith's cocoon. These bizarre monsters immediately rampaged all throughout the city, chasing all the unfortunate people that failed to escape. All of them were a bunch of hungry demons that wanted humans as snacks. Meanwhile, a portion of the alien goo is transformed into some sort of bug colony with the sole purpose of retrieving human captives to bring to the cocoon. For what purpose, you ask? It's to feed the hungry cocoon through the weird mouth from its ass end. Of course.
Ew! What the fuck?
Australith has become even more unsettling in its current form. It looked as though it enjoyed the taste of piled-up humans a little too much based on how enthusiastically it was licking the mountain of corpses. When it finally chomped down, dozens if not hundreds of poor saps were transformed into nothing but nutrients for the monster. The two-man media team was still going strong. In fact, they went even closer to get better shots of what's happening. The brave newscaster believes that this is a risk worth taking for the reward it will bring. The shadow-like beasts are taking the captured survivors to the cocoons for sustenance, piling them up like livestock to be turned into meat. Upon further observation, it became clear that the ones with huge bodies are like guards that are always watching the surroundings. There are also flying birds patrolling the area from above. It's as if they're monitoring every minor movement in the city. They are working seamlessly together just like humans. This clearly indicates that it has fully awakened intelligence. If they continue waiting until Australith completes its evolution, they are just waiting for things to go from bad to worse. At this point, everyone has one chilling question in mind. Can humans even defeat such a powerful foe? For the citizens of Jia City, the despair of being chased by the shadow beasts has already drained them of all hope that humanity could ever bounce back after this. Just as another one of these average Joes was about to become just another pile of meat for the cocoon's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the chasing shadow beast disintegrated with a hit of shockwave projectiles. It came from one of the members of Jia City's almost wiped out special force that uses pandas as mounts. Even though they were heavily injured, this pair venture out into the middle of the city to try and save some of the stragglers that were being freely hunted by the shadow beasts. That cursed cocoon creature actually spawns so many shadows not only to protect itself, but also to continue preying on helpless humans. 3 days have passed since the battle between Australith and Panda has concluded. The light around the mysterious cocoon is getting brighter day by day. The shadow beasts have also become stronger and fiercer along with the progression of their master. Right now, they have finally cornered the man and giant panda that has been putting a damper on their plans to get as much human captives for snacks. A short-haired woman named Xiao Zi listened to her giant panda partner to make a temporary retreat in the face of such a thick cluster of shadow beasts. Fortunately, their flight speed was surprisingly fast, and they were able to leave danger in the blink of an eye. Back in the hidden facility where the survivors have made refuge, they were relying on this Captain Xiao Zi and her giant panda to scout the outside world and see what the current situation was. They also relied on her for food runs. In their time outside, they'd only found 1 sack worth of goods to feed the entire population of survivors. Finding food has been getting increasingly difficult these days. Xiao Zi and Xiao Ai greeted each other. It seems like they know each other quite well. They went to their hangout spot, and the captain confessed that the outside has been completely overrun by shadow beasts now. If they don't find a way of escape soon, even if they don't get eaten, they will starve to death. The signals have been jammed. They've been cut off from the outside world. They don't even know if the Federation is making rescue efforts. But Xiao Ai was determined to survive. She realized that Chizi's sacrifice would be in vain if she didn't. The captain steeled her resolve and vowed to protect all the remaining survivors. Just as they were exchanging those heavy sentiments, the intruder alarm of the facility started blaring out. Everyone's attention was focused on the red lights and loud sirens. One of the lookouts hurriedly called everyone's attention to see what was happening outside for themselves. Somehow, some way, a large number of shadow beasts has managed to find their base and are now right outside. It looks like they know exactly what they are doing and where they are going. This is not good news for Captain Xiao Zi and Xiao Ai at all. The shadow beasts immediately lined up and started shattering all the windows of the facility with fearsome roars. It only took them a few seconds to completely break through and render all the protection efforts useless. The next thing you know, the survivors were getting picked up and taken away by the loyal subjects of Australith one by one. Some were unfortunate or maybe fortunate enough to die in the hands of the beasts instantly before getting fed to the insatiable cocoon. Captain Xiao Zi tried to rally everyone to take the elderly and the children to hide in the underground caves while everyone else should pick up weapons and fight back with their lives. It looks like that will not be happening though. Most of these people are just ordinary citizens, not soldiers or transcendent warriors. They are equally defenseless and terrified. Still, there are some that stood out among the crowd, some that even with insufficient combat prowess, still managed to pick up what they can and push back. It was the elderly zookeeper and his trusty gun. His stun of firing a single high-caliber bullet was wholly useless. It even worsened the situation as the shadow beast has locked onto him with renewed rage. He just moved without thinking. He did not consider that these monsters might have been impenetrable by ordinary bullets. Xiao Ai, on the other hand, was quick on her feet. She served as the guide for all the lucky ones that managed to run and hide in the underground caves. Captain Xiao Zi was their main fighting force, and even her position looked less than ideal. She and the giant panda has been surrounded by these shadow freaks in all angles. The giant panda was still aching from all its injuries due to the initial struggle against the Australith, but it was not letting up, and he was showing these shadow beasts the difference in their raw strength. The big guy is named Sun Bao, and fighting is starting to become too much of a strain on his wounds. The kid that Chizi saved a few days ago and found himself back in the evacuation shelter and now in the underground cave. He was urging Xiao Ai to hurry inside as well. But her role down here has already concluded. The brave woman had already decided to stay behind and fight the shadow beasts with her rifle. So she closed the entrance to the underground cave and steeled her resolve to join the fray. Xiao has not even finished preparing herself for the war when a rogue shadow beast just pounced from behind, not giving her any time to even think of dodging or defending. Thankfully, the layout of the underground entrance is just a tad too narrow for the massive shadow beast to move around freely. It so desperately tried to reach her with its nasty green teeth and nuclear wasteland-looking mouth. Staring directly into the monster's non-existent eyes, she vowed to never let herself get eaten by the likes of this creature. She was the iron will to survive. Looking through the sights of her sniper rifle from point blank, she yelled her resolve to survive this ordeal no matter what. One well-placed bullet on the shadow beast's weak spot was all it took to end the terror in the underground level. Stuck between the winding pipes and narrow halls, one of the monstrosities has perished. Xiao Ai took a deep breath. She was just getting started. In some remote area somewhere between Jia City and the Misty Mountains, you see some hippos chilling in the cool water of a river. This relaxed atmosphere was instantly disturbed as soon as they saw and felt massive, crystallized roots coming off the ground, as if they were hurriedly running towards somewhere or something. Of course, that this was none other than the God Tree and his deadly posse. His elite soldiers wore an equally intense look on their faces. One of their brothers had been wronged after all. The Divine Flower had also tagged along. They had been running non-stop for 7 days straight. If they continued this trajectory and speed, they would be able to reach their destination in 2 days. Peregrine falcons had already been deployed to scout the area in advance, and they must have arrived at the battlefield by now. Yuziu still wasn't satisfied with their rate of travel. He wanted everyone to continue speeding up. Just like the Divine Flower brought up, the Peregrine falcons had indeed arrived at the ruins of Jia City. Besides the cocoon of Australith, they had also spotted something unexpected in the distance. On top of one of the spiked platforms were silhouettes of humans, giving off an odd aura. It turned out to be the Dragon Team, the elites of the elites, spearheading the efforts of the United Federation in hopes of eliminating the problematic pupa. Since signals had been jammed, updates from this city had been in short supply. This was the first time that the Dragon Team was seeing the Shadow Beast serving as guards and workers to keep the Australith satiated with human meat. Given the fact that it needed some external force for protection, it's safe to assume that it's defenseless on its own. This might just be the only chance that humanity has to kill off the global threat. If they fail, they know full well that humanity might just perish altogether. In the meeting room of the higher-ups, they had finally been informed that their super team had reached Jia City and the battle plan had begun. Heavy armed troops were positioned right outside the city, but they still could not enter the premises due to the spiked formations. Earlier in the morning, there was also news from Yan City's reports that the Flame Princess, Xiao Ling, along with her troops were headed for action. The Federation leader didn't know whether to feel relief or fear knowing that such an unpredictable factor is joining the equation. Other than Yan City, White Emperor City's Wang Hao, Song City's Xiao Ya, Yin City's Han Du are also leading their respective teams towards the epicenter of action. All of them will reach the destination tomorrow. Other than the Dragon Palace guards handling urgent business in Japan, this war has turned into a full-blown nationwide battle. The Spirit Energy Surveillance Bureau also sent an urgent message. A creature with approximately 4 million spirit energy level is heading towards the direction of Jia City. Based on the power level and direction that it came from, there can only be one. What the humans have dubbed as the Misty Mountains Demon Tree. The Federation leader had been dodging this faction for a while now. He didn't expect that they would rear their heads in. In the heart of the ruined city, the Shadow Beast workers were still hard at work supplying the Australith with all the humans they could find. But there was someone in there that didn't fit the picture. A Transcendent Rank 2 soldier of the Dragon Team named Bai Juwei had successfully snuck inside the inner sanctum of the cocoon's lair by pretending to be a snack. His teammates were observing the progress from above as he slowly reached the target effortlessly. The outer shell of his cocoon is something that not even the elite humans can currently destroy. Since it needs to eat, attacking Australith from the inside is their only choice. That brings them to the plan of Bai Jue carrying a ton of spirit energy bombs and pretending to be one of the captive humans to close the distance. When the beast is about to devour him, that's when the second phase of the plan kicks in as he makes use of his ability to escape. Meanwhile, another soldier named Hong Ying, who is specialized in stealth, will be in charge of the detonation. Originally, it was just supposed to be a one-man operation with Bai Jue serving as the bomber and detonator, but he was scared of getting caught up in the ensuing explosion. After succeeding with the bomb toss, the rest of the team will hop in and lure the beasts from the left side to make an escape path for Bai Jue. The detonation will commence shortly after that. Unfortunately for Hong Ying, the detonator, magnetic field interference near the destruction beast is too strong and she needed to get closer to get in range of the remote detonator. Finally, Australit has opened its disgusting mouth once again, ready to snack on unfortunate victims piled up on top of each other like worthless meats. Bai Jue has been anxiously waiting for this opening for quite a while now. This is one and only shot. The dragon team was closely watching from above. They need to see and time the exact moment of the beast's actions. On top of the human meat pile was the second-order transcendent soldier. He has stopped pretending to be one of the unconscious grains of snack. He yelled at the ugly bastard to accept a small meeting gift, a compact belt full of compressed energy spirit bombs enough to blow up a small island to bits. As the countless humans were descending to become mere nutrients in the boundless mouth of the beast, the inconspicuous belt joined them with the help of gravity. When the Australit finally closed its vicious ass and mouth, Bai Jue the bomber has successfully managed to evade attention and being eaten thus far. But the moment that he landed in the middle of the shadow beasts guarding their beast god, all the attention has turned towards the white-haired transcendent. This was also the sign for the entirety human race's most powerful elites to jump in and help Bai Jue escape to the back while they take the aggro with the countless alien-like monsters. The shadow beasts along with Australit were too stunned to act at first. They did not expect this cover operation at all. Before even being able to react, the dragon team had already opened up the fight with a barrage of spirit energy bullet fire. Still, this was just the beginning of a quick feint attack. They are distracting the shadow beasts to make an opening for Bai Jue to retreat safely. It was up to the stealth specialist Hong Ying to bring this mission home. All she needed to do was detonate the spirit energy bomb at a safe distance. She continually pressed the button on the remote with less than ideal signal bars. Inside the Australit, the bombs were armed and ready to go. The problem was that the magnetic interference from the inside was just too high. Remote detonation might be too difficult, if not impossible. As Hong Ying was starting to panic at the lack of booms, she failed to notice an incoming deranged shadow beast stalking her from behind. This girl had one job. Bai Jue did his job. The question was, what the hell was the stealth girl doing? The white-haired soldier let his attention slip for a moment, and it looks like he might pay the ultimate price of losing a head for it. When the massive shadow beast chomped down, it did so with an impressive force. But Bai Jue was not an elite soldier of the dragon team for nothing. He had some serious skills and reaction time up his sleeves. He responded not by running away, but by bringing out his weapons of choice, the claw whip that diced the monster in 3 vertical parts. He might be the designated trick player, but running away is not the only thing he's good at. Unfortunately for him, there's another unexpected player in the mix. It was bearing similar dark marks as the shadow beasts. But this one was different. They had red skin, one eye, and was partially capable of human tongue, albeit only speaking in random words without meaning. Bai Jue just looked at the red shadow beast and evaluated that it's just an uglier version of an already ugly monster. But based on the pressure that this newcomer was emitting, it looks like Bai Jue has run out of luck. It has been way too long since the dragon team has stepped in, and the bombs still haven't detonated. The number of monsters is rapidly growing and slowly overwhelming them. The big ones have also started moving and munching on unfortunate soldiers. These guys are transcendent first-order beasts. The captain of the dragon team's vision is quite sharp, and he almost staggered at the sight of what he just saw. There's no doubt about it, in one of the beast's mouths, hanging out was Hong Yang's arms still holding the remote-controlled detonator. The captain then ordered everyone to seize that detonator no matter what happens. In doing so, he practically condemned multiple soldiers into their deaths from the seemingly casual attacks of the Shadow Beast guards. One of the more capable soldiers managed to close the distance and came within an arm's reach of the detonator. Upon closer look, of course, it was the captain who was able to do so. Unfortunately for him, the abnormal red shadow beast has also joined this side of the battlefield. It was using an elite transcendent second-order soldier as a blunt weapon. This ultimately ended up in a small explosion as the red beast thwarted the captain's charge. The captain and the unconscious Bai Juwei were sent flying away. It turns out that the red shadow beast is an anomaly of the transcendent second order, a formidable one near the peak at that. Going up against something that's strong on top of dealing with the endless amount of regular shadow beasts is way out of the captain's pay grade. Still, under the neon green lights of these out-of-this-world creatures, the captain steeled his resolve to not go out in vain like this. It turns out that he managed to snatch the detonator away. He took out its antenna, and with such a wide range, interference should be useless. He will gladly let himself get swallowed by the explosion if that means he can die together with countless shadow beasts to lessen the burden on his soldiers. From the middle of the cocoon's stomach area, spirit energy has started to coalesce, and it is quickly growing unstable. The instability has quickly grown out of control, resulting in the spirit energy bomb explosion of nuclear proportions right inside the pupa's fragile body. It even obliterated most of the shadow beasts that were near the vicinity of their boss. The captain of the dragon team was also caught up in the blast. He was badly injured but ultimately survived. Seeing the aftermath of the blast made him laugh as though he just single-handedly saved humanity. He has finally succeeded. It was a crucial mission and he pulled through. He wanted to dedicate this win to his troops that have fallen in battle. His soldiers did not die in vain. Except it looks like they did. The weird red shadow beast walked out of the dust and debris of the blast. It just strolled right past the captain soundlessly. When he finally felt the looming presence of such a terrifying beast, he turned to the side. He didn't get attacked or anything. What he saw felt worse. The red shadow beast has gone down on one knee. It was kneeling in the direction of the blast just a few seconds ago. The captain felt his stomach drop at the implication of this simple kneel. He probably started hearing boss music at this point, as he had already suspected. He did blow up the cocoon, he just blew it up a little too late. A menacing pair of black and purple wings spread throughout the air. A demonic maw opened with no sound coming out of it, making the atmosphere even more eerie, with a face that resembles that of an eldritch horror bug. An almost corporeal form full of a sinister aura, the fourth order destruction beast, Australith, has entered its peak form. Looking at the gigantic horror beyond human comprehension, the captain could not believe his eyes. This could not be happening because if this is real, what does humanity even do? As the maw of the beast swung down to scoop up the captain for dinner, all he could think about was what does humanity even have left to defeat such a beast? Outside of Jiyar City, the efforts to break through the spike formations were still ongoing and still fruitless. Every explosive or cannon shot they threw at the damn thing was utterly useless. It can't even make a dent. These walls are so tough that every soldier outside was growing restless and impatient for failing to blast through time and time again. But in this very moment, the military's recon team has reported to the commander that they've detected something unusual. There is a mysterious gap of unknown origins in the southern wall. It looks as though the spike formation on the side of the wall has been plowed through. A gap in the impenetrable city is way too weird, but there is no time to think. They must get the entirety of the military force through that southern wall. The shadow beasts tasked with rooting out all the remaining survivors were hard at work. They are scouring every place they detected human activities in. Inside the supermarket, the evacuees were working hard to block the doors and windows in hopes of preventing the monsters from breaching in. These vile creatures have surrounded them for 2 days now. Everyone is hardly hanging on anymore. They believe that they'll either be eaten, or they die from not having anything to eat. Captain Xiao Zi, no matter how determined she is, was also running low on hope in this hellscape. Xiao Ai and the older zookeeper were keeping an eye out for any possibility of monster breach. Their sniper rifles were locked and loaded to defend. Everyone knew that every person in this camp had already reached their limits physically, mentally, and everything else a long time ago. They're barely hanging on as is. And now is the time that the monsters picked to start their second wave invasion. They held makeshift weapons and yelled not to break the monsters in. But most of the light in their eyes had already died. They were drained. A shadow beast managed to make a hole big enough to sneak its head in and took a bite of one of the survivors' brains. It was too fast. Xiao Ai did not even have the chance to look down her sights, let alone fire a round. Captain Xiao Zi and Sun Bao geared up and got ready to fight and defend the people. From just one pointed breach, too many shadow beasts are now starting to pour in. At this rate, the death of every survivor is all but guaranteed. Just like before, another earthquake shook the shelter. The last time they felt the ground move this heavily was when the Australith started evolving, so this quake cannot be good. But this time, even the shadow beasts seemed utterly confused while the ground shakes vigorously. And in another bizarre twist, these same hungry and merciless monsters actually turned around and started running back to where they came from. But before they could even get far, a scaly foot of a beast started stomping them down like nothing. This time it's none of that alien goo beast nonsense, it's real flesh. Another one tried its best to get away only to get hacked down in two by a familiar battle axe. Next came the annihilation of multiple shadow beast workers in a dance of fire and explosions. Xiao Ai remained clueless as to what was happening. But now, the tremors have stopped completely. The next thing you know, there were thick and massive tree roots growing right out of the ground. The peach-colored hair beauty could not believe her eyes. Everyone in the Federation knew who these newcomers were. They've seen this group vilified to the high heavens. The full force of the Misty Mountains, led by the God Tree, has finally arrived and has joined the battle for Jiao City. Yuziyu towered over the makeshift evacuation shelter, a supermarket that the survivors converted to be a haven from the ancient creature's devastation. Humanity only knows him as the Demon Tree from the dangerous Misty Mountains. Not a single survivor dared to move. They think that the shadow beasts were just replaced with an even bigger threat that came out of nowhere. All of them were sure that they are done for. They think that the infamous Demon Tree will surely devour them. Their dreaded deaths have finally come, but instead of attacking like a mindless beast, Yuziyu just spoke up, asking the peach-colored hair beauty holding a sniper rifle if she's Xiao Ai. He wanted to know if this is the person that their little panda ninth brother desperately wanted to protect to the point of offering up his own life. Hearing the God Tree spoke of this so-called ninth brother left Xiao Ai speechless. It took a few seconds, but it finally clicked in her mind. She finally figured out that the God Tree and his whole party are Cheesy's friends and that they might have come here to save the little guy. Yuziyu confirmed and added that he has also come here to save the survivors. He promised to protect them too, as that was what the ninth brother wanted to do in the first place. He called on Qing Gang, and the muscular man came in carrying a massive wooden crate that he so easily carried forward. God Tree explained that this is all the food they brought all the way from Qingfeng City. It should be enough supplies to last every survivor for a whole day. One ungrateful dumbass blurted out that if this supply only lasts for today, then what about tomorrow? Yuziyu shot him an intense look and just declared that the survivors don't have to worry, as everything will be over, and they will be rescued by tomorrow. The secondary team, composed of Qinggang, Thorn, a Tempest Wolf, the Three Stooges, King Kong, and some auxiliary members will stay in this area to protect the survivors. The rest of them, the bulk of the Misty Mountains combat force, will be coming with the God Tree himself. Their target is in the heart of the ruined city. They came to wage war with the Destruction Beast and its shadows. Now that the Australith has gotten used to its new and improved body, It has started to look like a proper beast and not just some bulbous monster with tentacles. The shadow beasts nearby had also undergone quite a bit of change. At the peak of the Fourth Order Transcendence, Australith the Destruction Beast has reached spiritual power levels never seen before. He clocked in at 13 million, and he's hungry for more. On the other side of the city was the peak transcendent Third Order Willow God Tree, Uziyu. He clocked in at the spiritual power level of around 9.7 million. Within a short amount of time that the Destruction Beast has been forced out of its cocoon, it managed to lay thousands upon thousands of eggs as far as the eye could see. Uziyu was traversing the land like he was a sprint runner with roots for feet. Now it's obvious how a supposed 30-day trip was shortened to just 10 days with his travel speed. This was yet another unexpected twist for the media duo. The appearance of the infamous demon tree hailing from the Misty Mountains was a curveball. The cameraman feels like they'll probably die in this place sooner or later. After that monster transformed into a chrysalis, all signals in the vicinity were disrupted once again. A big news like this one needs to be reported in time. The newscaster's journalistic spirit was quite admirable. As soon as she got 3 bars of signal on her smartphone, she started smiling like a demon. All she wanted to do was cover the biggest news in the history of journalism. She's got that grind set. I respect that. She got so overexcited that the cameraman had to remind her to shut the hell up if she doesn't want the both of them to die an untimely death. On the way to the heart of the city, Uziyu started activating the spiritual field all around his area of effect. Meanwhile, the remaining operational broadcast station near Jia City has received the footage coming in from the center of the world event right now. As soon as they opened the video file, the astonishing events of the war in Jia left the director and his associate speechless. As I said earlier, not a single citizen of the Federation could ever forget the name and the appearance of the demon tree from the Misty Mountains. The director ordered his subordinate to inform the team of what was happening while getting ready for a live broadcast on the field. It is a bit iffy towing the line of whether they can or can't show footage of such a massive event without the supervision of the Federation. They might get in hot water for this, but the director knows when to push and when to pull. Today is the day to push and put the damn broadcast on the airwaves. If that demon tree wins, he will take responsibility for everything later. And if it loses, they won't be able to survive the Destruction Beast anyway. Above everything else, everyone in the world has the right to know what's really happening in that cursed city. This is the moment of humanity's survival or extinction, and everyone has the right to see a glimpse of the future. It did not take long for the emergency broadcast to reach the screens of everyone in the Federation. The news of the demon tree joining in the insanity of Jia City came as an absolute shock to everyone. Some think that this might just be a fight over territory between two terrible beasts, but everyone thought that the best case scenario for humanity is that both of these Herculean creatures just died together fighting each other. No one had a clue as to what will become of this world after this decisive battle. Some hardcore occultic congregations see this news as a sign that they are guided by the gods as humanity heads for destruction. Both sides are monsters unafraid of nuclear-level attacks. The higher-ups turn to the Federation leader for their next moves, but the leader is coming up with blanks. Godtree and Australith just looked at each other from a distance for a while, seemingly sizing up each other's strengths. Where the two have come close enough to start exchanging blows, not one of them made any sudden movements. With fights on this level, the mental battle is as important as the physical. The Nine Tails came to her master's side and informed him of something weird, a sense of spiritual wave emanating from inside the Destruction Beast. It's oddly familiar to Uziyu's life essence. The God Tree had already sensed that same thing. What's more alarming was that Australith is constantly emitting a very unsettling aura on top of the familiar life essence. This beast that has never spoken before finally opened its terrifying maw, welcoming God Tree. Uziyu did not expect that it has gained intelligence up to this level already. Australith continued that back when he swallowed that little panda, he sensed an unprecedented power within. It is the same aura emanating from the God Tree now. It is without a doubt the essence of life itself. The destruction beast taunted that the panda is still alive inside his stomach. It deliberately kept Chi-Zi alive to constantly sense that essence of life. This beast wanted to devour that essence from the source, devour the God Tree himself. Yu just grimly thanked the beast for informing him in advance. Now he knows that there is still a way to rescue their ninth brother. He just needed to kill and gut the son of the beeswax. Australith manically laughed as he ordered his shadow beast army to go forth and kill anything that moves. God Tree was not going to get swept up with the momentum. He and the entire attack force of Misty Mountains will charge with unparalleled aggression. The shadow beasts howled and growled. They might not have eyes, but they make up for it with sharpened senses and ruthless predatory efficiency. They are about to go up against perhaps the most powerful and diverse collective of beasts in the world at the moment, the Misty Mountains. The two parties did not waste any second longer. They got right into the messy business of messing each other up. Polar Bear King showed no mercy as he shocked the shadow beasts in his vicinity with his thunderous might. Demon Cow was not doing too badly either. He was swinging his battle axe like there's no tomorrow. Tyrannotitan the Tyrannosaurus Rex disintegrated the nearby shadow beasts with his destructive sonic attacks. And of course, Ninetails, the strongest of them all, decided to go in deeper than everyone else to face more enemies than anyone else. The plethora of shadow beasts all around her were ready to gobble her up into pieces. But that does not bother the strongest beast of Misty Mountains. She just calmly primed a fiery attack of her own. When she had finally unleashed the Inferno Blast, countless shadow beasts melted right where they were standing. It was not a bloodbath, it was more like a cookout. In the middle of the burning masses of shadow beast meat stood Ninetails, unwavering and seemingly untouchable. On the other side of the city, the main event was entering its initial stages. God Tree tried to sneak in some fast root attacks, but Australith the Destruction Beast is a fourth-order transcendent beast that can't go down that easily. They are only starting a fight, yet one of Yuzu's primary modes of attack had already been proven to be useful. He just can't penetrate through Australith's thick skin. And that Destruction Beast's defense was not the only thing that he needs to worry about. It also boasts a terrifying offensive side with its tendrils. Yuzu quickly succumbed to the piercing power of these purple tendrils. They were just too fast. After piercing through his hardened body, the tendrils even went forth, not losing their momentum and hitting the Misty Mountain beasts behind. God Tree knows that fighting in this place is a very bad idea. If they continue doing so, it will undoubtedly affect his troops. That little moment of hesitation to think about transferring to another battlefield was a grave mistake. Australith took the chance to close the gap that moment. The Destruction Beast took a massive bite out of the God Tree's body, seemingly eating his core for dinner. Australith started laughing maniacally as the massive body of the God Tree slowly limped down, lifeless. But Yuzu will not go down that easy. But you can't blame Australith for being fooled. He was under hallucination after all. God Tree has a few tricks up his sleeves, and this is just one of many. That hallucination has given him an opening to attack with his roots again. For the first time in a while, Yuzu gave this attack his all to the point of grunting. There are very few enemies that could push him to this state. Even though there is a chasm of difference between their quantitative strength, he still managed to push the Destruction Beast back. He might not have caused too much damage, but it was enough for Australith to take him a little more seriously now. That root attack also took the battlefield out of the middle of the city and into a mysterious field of what looks like eggs. God Tree assessed that these overwhelming numbers of chrysalises here should have come from the Destruction Beast himself. These Moth Guy explained that all these eggs, as far as the eye could see, are his offspring, and soon they'll hatch. At that point, all the creatures in this world will become his food. The order of the food chain is not only going to change, but it will also be reprogrammed. The only purpose of this world's existence will be to serve Australith and his offspring. The Destruction Beast knew that Yuzu deliberately dragged him out of here because of the fear of harming the Misty Mountain beasts. But in the eyes of Australith, this was a meaningless struggle. He believes that his subordinates will absolutely annihilate the god trees. And it will start with the anomalous red shadow beasts, as they have the strength of second-order transcendent beings. As for the boss himself, Australith plans to devour him to become nothing but just a source of strength. Australith is already counting his chickens before they hatch. Against a menace like the god tree, the destruction beast could not be more wrong. Misty Mountain beasts are not weak to the point of being defeated by mindless shadow beasts. Even if there's a gap in strength, the beasts hold the edge when it comes to harnessing their strong emotions. Also, there's one more thing that Australith did not get right. God Tree did not drag him this far because of some fear of harming the other beasts. As Yuziu's body slowly transforms into a foreign form, he explained that confronting a transcendent fourth order being requires the use of full firepower. He already knows that he'll kill this pesky destruction beast one way or another, but he can't guarantee another thing while he's doing so. With stalwart branches behind his head, a fearsome face that spells death, a menacing crimson aura of devastation, God Tree is finished transforming into his ultimate combat form. That's a freaking Gundam tree on demon time. Since his narrow win against the humans, he has been contemplating the most effective combative stance that he could implement. Sure enough, he has come to this form as the best practical choice. Australith was speechless. It looks like he was not the only one capable of changing forms in this city. As fireballs started manifesting around God Tree's new body, he warned the destruction beast that he can never reach the pinnacle of this world. His descendants will not live in this world. Yuziu himself will annihilate every one of these bugs. For the first time in this battle, Australith looked genuinely upset as it screamed for the God Tree to stop what he's about to do. But it was too late. Multiple explosions of nuclear proportions started littering the ground where the defenseless chrysalises were awaiting their hatching that will never come. Every beast out on the other side of Jia or city felt and saw those massive blasts. The heart of the city was plunged into hellfire, but it's better to have a few more destroyed skyscrapers instead of 1,000 destruction beasts roaming the world. Australith himself was not too harmed by the explosion. He definitely hates the fact that his offspring were literally cooked though. God Tree turned to the destruction beast in surprise of this extremely emotional response. He thought that this guy was the emotionless type. He never expected that Australith would mourn his dead children. This beast that mercilessly killed countless people and destroyed everything in its path can feel anger too. Right now, he just wanted to kill the God Tree no matter what. Yuziu was ready for the worst that is yet to come. An explosion of speed collided in the middle of Jia city. The fearless media duo kept themselves hidden while trying to get the best shot of the fight. It's finally time for combat. Unfortunately for them, a single wandering shadow beast just happened to spot their hiding place. It looks like this will be the end of the Jia City War broadcast, unless it's not. The shadow beast has been repelled by some unknown force. It was none other than Captain Xiao Zi and her trusty giant panda mount coming to the people's rescue. Meanwhile, the evacuation efforts are being stifled by other shadow beasts, and the only line of defense that the humans have are Baldhead and his crew. Baldhead has never been one to back down from a fight before. Not that he has gotten stronger from training with a God Tree. The same thing goes. Shadow beasts versus beasts made of flesh and blood that have undergone countless evolutions. Who will win? Baldhead and the crew might come out on top when it comes to individual strengths, but there were just too many shadow beasts to keep track of, and their target is locked onto the humans. No matter how hard they try to escape this horror, some will succumb to the relentless beastly chase. Just as the humans were about to get picked off one by one, not leaving a single survivor behind, something came into view from the rubbles of the city. There is a giant monster ahead. Its face has been obscured by darkness. This is the Monkey King. The survivors have stopped running for their lives. They were slowly accepting that today will be the day that they die, but they don't want to die. Monkey King lifted his muscular arms casually and aimed at the approaching shadow beasts. He then started pounding the ground, making minced meat out of the disgusting innards of the shadow beasts. The next thing you know, this single powerful monster has driven out and destroyed the approaching horde of shadows. Each of these loathsome beasts that came from Australic's vomit were dismantled. Each kill was more gruesome than the last. After the preliminary assault of the Monkey King, the gaggle of monkey beasts started pouring into the city like it was their personal playground, and the shadow beasts are their toys. Apes and monkeys versus otherworldly shadow beasts. Just from the vitality and intensity of the primates alone, the results were already obvious. The humans that were saved from the maws of certain death were still shaking in fear. They think that these new beasts just see them as food, worth fighting over for. But when the Monkey King at the front started speaking human tongue and asking if anyone among them worked at the zoo, the survivors felt confused. Imagine being a human in the middle of a war-torn city crawling with mindless beasts, then suddenly, a massive monkey started speaking clearly. On the other side of Jia City, the conditions were not looking too good environment-wise. But thanks to the praying mantis' efforts, the humans in this area have been located and are ready for a seamless evacuation. They might look like savage beasts, but they will ride or die when it comes to the God Tree's orders. When their boss tells them that ensuring human safety takes priority, including the rescue of zoo staff, they will follow suit. The wingnet units have also been deployed to take care of the unconscious survivors, taking them to safety. Qinggong has been monitoring the entirety of Jia City, sensing every movement of the earth in his pedestal. He serves as the connective hub of the evacuation efforts. Thorn contacted him that all surviving humans in the city have been finally located. The next step is to get them out of the city immediately. They just need to do this right, and the rest will depend on the God Tree and the 9 great beasts in the front lines. Qinggong's squad and Ant Queen's team are on the north side. Praying Mantis Queen's team and Wild Boar King's group are flanking Nine Tails and her combat team. Monkey King's team is coordinating the rescue at the south near where the God Tree and the Destruction Beast are having their showdown. Speaking of Nine Tails and the combat team, it sounds like she was not having a great time fighting against the anomalous Red Shadow Beast. It has the ability to alter its physical form, augmenting physical attacks in various ways. The Red Shadow Beast thinks that fighting Nine Tails is boring and tedious. It thinks that the most powerful beast of the Misty Mountains was just way too weak, no matter how you spin it. Glacier the giant mammoth was also struggling. He might hold the size advantage, but being swarmed by countless shadow beasts is not a good position to be in at all. Little White Snake was starting to have trouble too. There are just way too many shadow beasts, and they are desperately clingy and not in a good way. The other members of the combat team were not doing too bad as they take down shadows after shadows at a decent pace. But the thing is, when it comes to a war of this scale, casualties on either side are essentially inevitable. The first death on the Misty Mountain side would be a spider and a hedgehog duo, when a humongous shadow beast dove down with a chomp. But the two miraculously survived thanks to White Tiger and his swift wings. It looks like even up in the air, you won't be entirely safe from the assault of these vomit beasts. White Tiger was caught off guard and was sent flying to collide with a broken down building. But the shadow beast that snuck in a hit suffered a much more painful fate. Cuts from head, its long neck, and throughout its entire body. The culprit was none other than the new and improved Sparky and his lethal blades. These vomit beasts might be big, but sometimes it's not about the size. Sparky observed that their enemies are wholly different from humans. These are killing machines utterly devoid of emotions. They have no fear whatsoever. All of them are charging forward without caring about their lives. There are avian shadow beasts too, and the battle up in the air was just as fierce as down below. The Misty Mountain avian beast force was not well equipped enough to stop the charge of endless waves of flying shadow beasts. The human cow has graduated to ripping out these vomit beasts from limb to limb with his bare hands. But even this resilient beast was starting to feel the fatigue from the endless waves of enemies. There is still no certainty with regards to how much longer they have to fight like this. That was until a representative of the Peregrine Falcon faction started flying through Jiyaer City to disseminate the news. Given his superior speed, this Peregrine Falcon was the most efficient message carrier to tell everyone that there are no humans left in the area anymore. With this piece of information, they can finally stop holding back and start giving it their all in the fight. There's no more stalling and no more using just defense. Finally, the beasts of the Misty Mountains can finally act as beasts with no need to hold back their animalistic tendencies. They have endured for far too long, and they deserve a bloodbath. Tyrannotitan unleashed his Echo Wave with maximum firepower, effectively ripping through the flesh of countless shadow beasts. Demon Cow has also activated his gravitational force, essentially rendering all nearby enemies useless. On top of that, his gravitational control extended to the ruined skyscrapers, raining them down as meteoric weapons heading for the ground, leaving shadow beast stains on the concrete. Little White Snake has no sludge either. After feasting on spirit stones for quite a while, this beast was now capable of glacial flow, icebound domain to encase every enemy in sight in spikes of frost. On the contrary, Tyrannotitan roasted every enemy on the way with his Inferno Ray Beam. The fire traveled so far and so fast that it spread through the winding streets of Jiyaer City, erasing every enemy along the way. Meanwhile, Ninetales and the anomalous Red Shadow Beast are still locked in a staring contest. Her mind was not in this fight at all. Ninetales couldn't care less. She just kept on thinking about how crazy their ninth brother, Little Panda, was for undertaking this perilous task alone. She took it as he did not trust them to be of help. So, after all this is over, something needs to be done. The Red Shadow Beast did not even stand a sliver of a chance once Ninetales got the permission to stop holding back. She was definitely going to teach that Little Panda a lesson once they finish up here. For now, she intends to take all this frustration out and teach this unsuspecting victim the lesson that she so desperately wanted to impart. Flame Body created a blazing sphere of death that essentially deleted all forms of life within its radius. That is a let her cook moment. The environmental disruption that the Flame Body technique unleashed upon the world disrupted the human efforts to get closer to the battlefield. Military and media teams were trying to cover what in the world was happening, but now they feared getting shot down. Thinking that the beasts were busy fighting each other, they pushed forth. They wanted to do that, but the fear and confusion for what's happening in this historic battle was evident on their faces. Glacier, the battle mammoth, finally has the green light to mow down tons of enemies with rapid collision. The Polar King Bear and his elite squad of Arctic bears were also cleaning up their area with vicious thunderclap roars. Of course, Sparky was not one to get overshadowed by his oversized comrades. He sliced and diced through a mountain of shadow beasts with strength amplification. His triple strike was particularly terrifying. It beheaded and dismembered not only enemies but also freaking skyscrapers that just happened to be on the way. The Air Beast Strike Force was also doing their part, simply cooking the Shadow Beast from the safety of the skies. Peregrine Falcons have a different way of killing. They just simply use their beaks and unstoppable force to cleave through Shadow Beasts. The King of the Jungle was also showing the world that he's not just a dumb white tiger. I dare you to tell that to his face while he's standing on a literal mountain of corpses. People from all over the globe witnessed just how powerful these beasts from the Misty Mountains really are. Jiyaer City is on the brink of annihilation now. If they looked overwhelming on the screen, then they are 1,000 times more imposing even if you're hundreds of feet in the air. Another odd thing was that some shadow beasts have seemingly transformed to a different hue and are now fighting amongst themselves. The mastermind behind this development was none other than the new addition to the team, Celestial Earth's enigmatic flower herself. And she is pissed off the highest level. She will not forgive the destruction beast for injuring and kidnapping her beloved little panda. Out in the broadcast station, they just received the news that the Jiyaer media team was back online after being rescued by the surviving members of the Iron Knight Pandas. It's hard to even put into words just how brutal the war raging on the city really was. What's even weirder was that the city residents are being gathered and escorted out of the city into safety by the monsters of Misty Mountains. Not only that, but there are also numerous monsters ahead blocking the shadow beasts from hunting down the survivors. It might be hard to digest by the humans who were being protected by the beasts that they feared. The Federation leader was also notified of this bizarre development. No one expected for things to go this way. This was a bad look for the Federation, and they are now in uncharted territory when it comes to human-beast conflict. Still, this does not change the fact that the demon tree is only a transcendent third order being, and that the destruction beast is of the fourth order. The difference in strength is too vast. Even though safeguarding more lives is crucial, it is meaningless in the grand scheme of things if they don't defeat Austrelith. Humanity's only hope is to rely on their sworn enemy, the demon tree. But if the strongest monster on their side fails, their next moves would determine everything. The Federation head had to make the call. He needs the spiritual missiles ready to launch at any moment. He has been ready for a while now. They have one missile more powerful than the ones they used against the demon tree in the previous war. They gathered the spiritual power of the entire nation's transcendent beings in a single load. The leader decided that the moment the demon tree goes down, they will fire the spiritual missile directly at the destruction beast. It was just ironic that what they once wanted to destroy could now possibly become their sole savior. Humanity can only place all their hopes on the new combat form of the so-called demon tree. Speaking of his new combat form, UZU's Zephyr Willow Strike has turned into an even more lethal weapon. In point-blank range, Austrelith knows that he could not possibly take all that sharpness unharmed, forcing him to a winged shield. But right after guarding against all the wind blades, this muff beast started unleashing some fire-scale powder. God Tree looked at the surroundings and saw the odd lights starting to surround him. Without any warning, these lights immediately detonated all over UZU. Austrelith boasted that he already knows the God Tree's obvious weakness and all that. He was so proud of busting out his surprise fire-based skill. But all that yapping just earned him a jab of a strong root straight through the body. God Tree would like to protest about that obvious weakness this bug was talking about. If he really was weak to fire attacks, then why didn't he feel anything under that intense explosion? Austrelith clicked his tongue. He had a bad read against the big boss. God Tree might be made of wood, but it's microtypical flame maple wood. To add even more insult to his face, particles of fiery light also surrounded Austrelith. The scene was way too similar to what he did just earlier. God Tree just laughed at the bug's stupidity. If it's fire-based skills they are talking about, then he could bust out one of his own too. A tree might be made of wood, but bugs should be vulnerable against fire too. This is getting increasingly worse for Austrelith. Just as the explosion was on the verge of reaching its crescendo, the destruction beast pulled out another ace. He had to use pure spiritual power just to dispel the quickly coalescing burst of blazing force. Now, this bug beast really was pissed off. All he could think about was killing and tearing this tree limb from limb, bark from bark. And to do that, Austrelith pushed his speeds to the limit, seemingly vanishing out of thin air. Unlike God Tree, the destruction beast might possess some fire-based skills, yet he's still vulnerable to its fiery onslaught. This ridiculous weakness loophole that the Austrelith has is an exploitable one. It's not looking good for the bug. With the enemy's secret weakness out in the open, all UZU had to do was catch him with a possible scorching kill shot. Under the threat of being burned alive, Austrelith forgot to account for the God Tree's plethora of attacking moves, and now he has another hole in his body with a root stab. For the first time in short life, the destruction beast has coughed up blood and felt the pain of being outplayed. God Tree was not aiming for the enemy's vitals though, it wouldn't be that easy. Instead, he was hunting for a blue orb inside. Inside this blue orb was the slumbering, injured little panda. God Tree's primary goal was the retrieval of the ninth brother after all. Realizing that he just got punked again, Australith immediately released scale powder into the air once more, only to get interrupted by multiple root strikes. Yuziu clicked his tongue. This bug just won't learn its lesson and was just throwing powerful moves one after the other. Now that the scale powder has failed to mix with the atmosphere, the destruction beast had to pull out in fear of getting caught by the god tree's follow-up attack. Australith succeeded in doing so without much struggle. He still has the speed of a fourth-order transcendent beast after all. Nevertheless, it's a big win for Yuziu. He just successfully rescued one of his subordinates. Looking at the blue orb, it seems like little Panda is just in a dormant state. They have a lot to say to each other, but they can just talk about it after everything's over. God Tree then threw the blue orb out into the other direction like he was Shohei Ohtani. This throw was an absolute beamer, traveling through the ruins of Jiat City with unbelievable speeds. If you are observant enough like Ninetales, you would see a mini blue meteor traveling right above. She immediately turned to Demon Cow. They did not even have to exchange words. He knows what must be done. Demon Cow swiftly extended his anti-gravity field up into the air to catch and stop the blue orb's momentum. Only now did they see what was inside of this weird object that the God Tree threw their way. It was their ninth brother. Ninetales ordered the attack force to get their ninth brother out of here, out of harm, while she holds down the fort by herself. The little white snake was the best fit for the job with her lithe and fast movements across the ruins of the prosperous human city. Even with her agility, it wasn't enough to go to safety without any stoppages. The number of shadow beasts lurking everywhere was still an issue. Seeing little white snake and the slumbering little panda get jammed up by countless shadow beasts alarmed Ninetales. She immediately left her ongoing fight, exploding into thunderous speeds. Ninetales was not just built for raw power, she was built for speed. But while she was on the way, the problem at the other side of the field was already resolving itself one tiny punch at a time. Little Panda has woken up from his slumber. He just broke free from the blue orb, and he's already breaking jaws. One punch from the little fellow deleted a shadow beast's head into an empty mist. He was still heavily injured from fighting solo against the destruction beast, but that did not stop him from showing these grunts who's boss. Now that his consciousness was back, he started grappling with the fact that he thought he died. But the sight of his brothers and sisters from the misty mountains appearing before him added to the confusion. The little panda felt powerless, but his pride just wouldn't let him ask these guys for help for his personal matters. Ninetales had to explain that after he was swallowed whole by the destruction beast, their master came in running for the save. He did not even think about the possibility that the God Tree was also here for his sake. Ninetales continued that it's not just the master and the core team. Everyone was here, and right now they are desperately putting their lives on the line on the battlefield known as Jiat City. They are protecting what their ninth brother holds dear. They are protecting what the little panda wanted to protect. Ninetales shot her basically little brother with a frustrated glare. She was glad that he's alive, but it shouldn't have gotten to this point in the first place. She could not endure it any longer. She had to smack this little brother of hers just a little for being so stubborn. Demon Cow and Little White Snake watched in horror as Little Panda already has life-threatening injuries in his body. Little Panda looked up to his big sister, not knowing the words to say. She just wanted to know why in the world this little troublemaker did not call them for help. Panda tried to state his reasoning, but he could not really come up with any reasonable ones. Ninetales continued to scold him about going rogue and doing something so dangerous all alone. She asked him if they are not worthy enough for him to rely on. Little Panda could not let out a word at all. His emotions were running high like it has never been before. Ninetales asked another even more hard-hitting question. Is it possible that deep within their little brother's heart, he doesn't fully trust his family at the Misty Mountains? But that really was not the case for Little Panda. He just does not want everyone to die for his sake. He wants everyone to live, so he wanted to take on the burden by himself. Ninetales understands where he's coming from, but she felt offended. She asserted that they will not die. Based on the determined body language of the other beasts, They wanted to echo out the sentiment of their eldest sister. Even the beasts that were not in the upper echelon had the aura of monsters that would not go down so easily. When they pool their terrifying strengths together, they are a fearsome force that one can lean on. A force that their ninth brother could ask for help when it comes to anything. At this moment, little Panda could not help but let go of the emotional baggage that he was carrying for far too long. Tears and snot cascaded down his face. The words of his new family and the support they were ready to give him were overwhelming. The next thing you know, he was tossed up in the air for Little White Snake to catch. Ninetails wanted him to go for now. The person he's been looking for has been waiting for him all along. Minth Brother will never forget the kindness that the God Tree, Ninetails, and everyone has given him. On the other side of the war zone, Shingon was altering the topography with his copper wall technique. This was in service of blocking the hordes of shadow beasts trying to get to the remaining survivors so desperately. The enemies managed to locate where they were transporting the evacuees and are now being barred in a narrow part of the city. Any beasts that managed to find another way were blocked and promptly eliminated by the Misty Mountain monsters tasked with defending the people. Thorn was coordinating their retreat while keeping an eye on the copper wall for any threats that might slip through the cracks. They have to protect the evacuating citizens and deal with the shadow beasts as soon as possible. But the numbers of the enemies kept on increasing. Not only that, but they also have monsters that have the leaping power to render the Great Wall useless. After jumping through that barrier, they were free to take their pick on the crowd of people on the other side. Now that the shadow beasts have appeared from the skies, there will be a lot of casualties. Fortunately for these helpless survivors, another force has entered the fray with their high-caliber bullets. Shingon and the Misty Mountain Rescue Force swiftly turned their heads to the source of that firepower. It was none other than the human military force. They had infantry and attack helicopters finally breach the walled-up city. They were under the orders to protect the Misty Mountain beasts while assisting the citizens in evacuating. Wait, they're doing the smart thing. These are fake humans. This came as quite a surprise. The human military of all forces were actually teaming up with them openly. The Federation leader knows that this was their only choice to keep casualties at a minimum and maintain the possibility of coming out on top. The shadow beasts have finally breached through the copper wall, but they are under suppressive fire from the military forces. These poor soldiers were essentially deployed to their deaths. Their enhanced bullets could barely keep up with the swarm of enemies. They came to the brink of being wiped out by the stronger shadow beasts. But this is where the beauty of collaborating with the Misty Mountain beasts comes through with some clutch kills. Even with reinforcements, they are still down in numbers. Some shadow beasts managed to sneak into where the survivors are. This rescue effort was just clutch kills once after the other. But this time, it came from one of the survivors, from Xiao Ai's marksmanship to be exact. She might just be another zookeeper, but her courage in this whole ordeal cannot be understated. It's just that her bravery always puts her in incredibly dangerous positions. This time, it puts her on the brink of being eaten by one of the rogue shadow beasts hungry for human flesh. Thankfully, a fuzzy pair of legs has come rushing in like there's no tomorrow. Instead of Xiao AI getting bit in half, it was Little Panda chomping down on some shadow beast flesh instead. With his limited bite force, the little guy bit as hard as he could to save a person that was very near and dear to his heart. Seeing the little panda that Xiao Ai took care of when he was just a helpless cub once again, it was as if the threat of the shadow beast didn't even matter. This was Chi Zi. This was that cowardly little guy that is transformed into a dependable savior. Coming in hot with the momentum of his run was enough to knock the shadow beast away from the public. Now, the survivors had a clear runway to safety outside of the cursed Jia city. Little White Snake and Shingon had also joined the fray to deter all attempts to pick off the evacuees. Their reinforcement was truly a godsend for the struggle on this side of the battle. The military has also solidified their foothold to unleash the might of their bullets, not letting one more civilian fall prey to the shadow beasts. Still, the Vomit Beast reinforcements were not stopping. It was as if they were not even making a dent in their number. This is when the military force decided to bring out the big guns, the RPG explosives, their ultimate deterrent. These loads of pure explosion were quite effective in neutralizing their targets in bulk. The second wave of RPG explosives was unleashed in hopes of wiping out the enemies. But the Shadow Beasts did something unusual. They were quite fast when it comes to adaptation. The girthy RPG load actually got swallowed from head to its base.
What do you mean by that?
Then the Shadow Beast that throat, that rocket opened its mouth again and sent the freaking explosive back with a vengeance. Its target was not the Misty Mountain Beasts or the military forces. It was the civilians running for their lives. Shingang saw this and tried to help, but he was just too far and he can't possibly block it in time. Thorn was also not in the position to intervene. They could only watch helplessly as the rocket heads for the clump of helpless survivors. Among those that are about to get turned into dust was Shi Yao-ai. It was at this moment that a being with heavenly white feathers descended from the heavens above. Its talons gripped the rocket, not minding the propulsion that it has. It's none other than the forgettable white crane of the Misty Mountains. The military was shocked. Thorn and the other Misty Mountain beasts were even more surprised. White Crane threw the explosive back to the Shadow Beasts. It was basically a game of hot potato with the RPG loads. Cool guys or cool birds do not look at explosions. Another crucial save from the unsung hero of Misty Mountains. Shingang and Thorn cheered for the White Crane. That bird is usually inconspicuous, but he's always been useful in critical moments. Hearing these backhanded compliments did not sit well for the other beasts listening. Even more so in White Crane's ears. He could not help but shed a single tear for his unrecognized heroism. Now that the civilians have evacuated at a safe enough distance, the military could finally up the gear and maximize their firepower output. But the problems just kept on going even now. The Shadow Beasts have figured out a way up into the rooftops of the ruined buildings and are now leaping down to attack. This type of suicide attacks took out a lot of military infantries on the floor. But that won't be too much of an issue for too long for the White Emperor's sword it's about to descend on the battlefield. Wan Hao, the loser White Emperor, has entered the fray to deliver these Shadow Beasts to their deaths. It's also quite popular when it comes to the infantry or to the whole Federation for that matter. With the White Emperor was the next set of reinforcements that just told the ordinary military forces to rest well now. The transcendent human forces will take it from here. Even they had never thought that they'd see the day when they team up with monsters on a mission. But the transcendent soldier with the big guns thinks that this team up was a joke. He thinks that humans got this. He has the utmost confidence when it comes to his big guns and his spiritual cannon technique. It is quite destructive, deleting dozens if not hundreds of Shadow Beasts in one go. The other transcendent soldier with him was also doing quite well. He was all smiles while cutting up Shadow Beasts from left and right. The White Emperor was the flashiest though. Anywhere his blade goes, Shadow Beasts were sliced and diced neatly. With the addition of 3 transcendent soldiers, the efforts to push back the enemies got a whole lot easier from this point on. The military infantry idolized these city lords that are the pinnacle of human capabilities in their eyes. They are in a completely different league from normal humans. Those sentiments can easily go to someone's head and inflate their ego, especially for jackasses like this one with the big guns. He unleashed the spiritual cannon in all directions with no mercy and no regard for friend or enemy either. Bald-headed felt that something was not quite right, and when he turned his head, a scorching heat and bright light slowly closing and surprised him. That guy with the big guns was actually lighting up the whole battlefield even if it was under the control of the Misty Mountain Beasts. He laughed maniacally, making it obvious that he doesn't differentiate targets. When he sees a beast, shadow, or otherwise, he will fire and send them to hell. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner for the Dumb Ass Human Award. A lot of Shadow Beasts were sent to the Shadow Realm, but a lot of Misty Mountain Beasts also joined them. Big Guns kept on laughing maniacally. In his tiny piece of brain, he was just slaughtering the enemies of humanity. Shingang was not about to let that slide, though. he immediately raised the Earth's grand terrain. Structures of hardened and spiked Earth formations started to gather around big guns, threatening to take his life right then and there. Shingang was smart enough to just warn Big Guns that if another shell lands on one of his comrades, then Big Guns could say bye to his pitiful life. Big Guns knew that Shingang was not joking around, and he promised to tone it down. Baldhead thinks that the man was not being sincere, so a casual shock of thousands of volts could perhaps clear the air properly. Shigyara City is in a sorry state. It just experienced and is still experiencing an unprecedented war after all. Yuzi was still locked in on his single combat against the big bad destruction beast. His 9-wood arboreal roots are proving to be an effective weapon. Each root was stabbing and wounding the seemingly indestructible enemy, but he's whittling down its health bit by bit. At the moment, Godtree has the obvious upper hand. He's been slapping this bug left, right, and center to a sorry state. But the might and durability of an anomalous beast at this level could not be underestimated. Even with injuries, it still has the capacity to retaliate. Using purple tendrils, Australith effectively limited the Godtree's movement for a while. This was a very effective constriction to stop the one-sided onslaught. The destruction beast was also clever enough to wrap those dirty tendrils around his roots, effectively stopping the stab attacks. Not only that, Australith was planning to haul him up into space where you will be helpless as he doesn't have the ability to engage in aerial battles. In space, the destruction beast will have the upper hand and defeat will be certain. Godtree might not have wings to fight up in the air, but the enemy was still foolish to think that he has no counters for this type of situation. He could just throw all of his weakness out of the window by simply using the new ability that he was playing with in the northern regions, Gigantification. Seeing Godtree's body start to transform and change size came as a shock to Australith. After getting freed from the binding of the purple tendrils, Godtree resembled an old forest god that was about to crush a pesky bug. His punch from the hardened and gigantic fist made of wood landed squarely on the destruction beast's entire body. Yuzi was really going all out now. He's tired of this unkillable bug buzzing all over him. His amplified size has now towered even the highest skyscrapers of Jiao City. The destruction he could unleash has also gone up. In this battle of the pinnacle of monsters, human structures were taking the biggest damage. Watching this, Ninetails could not help but grit her teeth. She wanted to help her master in this decisive fight. Meanwhile, the media team in the helicopter was suffering from the impacts of the battle. They made sure to keep a healthy distance from the epicenter, but the shockwaves can still reach them. Just that one strike created a huge crater in the middle of the city. The scale of this battle has never been seen before. Transcended third order and fourth order beings are simply beyond human comprehension, no matter how you spin it. Godtree watched the impact of his attack, looking for signs of the destruction beast among the dust and rubble. It was extremely effective. He almost finished off Australith with that one punch. He took out one of the bug's wings and caused irreparable damage to the body. But as expected, it's not easy to kill a transcendent fourth-order beast in one hit even if you pour everything into it. It's better to say that it's already impressive that he pushed such a beast to such a condition. Instead of being flustered, the destruction beast seemed oddly calm. This bug just called to him. Using one of its own purple tendrils, Australith decided to discard the damaged legs altogether. He took out one of his limbs without as much as a wince just like that. Yuzi felt unnerved by this development. This was not how the fight was supposed to go. In place of that detached limb, a sprout of something entirely different started emerging. Godtree praised the bug for having the guts to abandon even his own limbs after assessing that they will be useless. Australith believes that damaged limbs will only be a burden in a battle of this caliber. He thinks that it doesn't matter anyway. Once he eats the Godtree himself, Australith will evolve into a new form, and he intends to keep on evolving and keep on living on. And then he will eventually manifest the most perfect form that this world has ever seen. For the destruction beast, continuous evolution is the meaning of his entire existence. At that moment, Yuziu's system warned him that the enemy's spiritual power has started to rise rapidly. It jumped from 7.6 million to 8.9 million in just a few seconds. Australith added that with the God Tree's limited power, he cannot handle the power of a transcendent fourth order. The Destruction Beast is done playing along. He will put everything into his next attack to obliterate God Tree and the whole city. The overpowered bug has a point. Compared to his paltry 3.3 million points of remaining spiritual power, Australith was just way too powerful. And all that power was channeled into a beam of light that threatened to eviscerate anyone unfortunate enough to get targeted. Yuziu braced himself and activated crystallization on his arms in an effort to possibly stave off the incoming beam. Thankfully, the texture of his crystallization was enough to redirect the powerful attack up into the skies. That did not stop it from going forth in a seemingly endless stream of pure spiritual power, though. The beam eventually concluded in a gigantic explosion far from the city, an explosion in the scale that has never been recorded in human history. Try as they might, the media team struggled to keep the helicopter steady from the winds of decimation coming off the explosion. That attack just now has caused a 7.0 magnitude earthquake in Jiao City and all the nearby areas. If that attack had detonated in the middle of the battlefield, it would be akin to an extinction event. The higher-ups know that if it weren't for the God Tree confronting Australith, then they would not have stood a chance. It's likely that the entire city would have been razed to the ground and the whole Federation would have come next. The earthquake in Jiao City caused the countless ruined infrastructures with damaged foundations to topple. Thankfully, Qinggang was alert enough to build an earthen haven to protect everyone inside. They know that the fight of the Titans caused this. Yuziu didn't expect that this overpowered bug would hide his strength for a critical moment like this. He probably used the same trick to catch the Leviathan Monarch off guard before. In order to redirect that attack away from this city, God Tree paid the price of losing almost half of his entire body. Australith is the first opponent to reduce him to such a state. Seeing God Tree in this condition, the Federation leader handed down the order to prepare the spiritual missile. Once the God Tree is defeated, or even just shows signs of being beaten, they can't afford to hesitate any longer. Humanity must be decisive and ruthless. They must launch their final card at the opportune moment.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The overpowered bug praised Yuziu for withstanding a blow that even the Leviathan Monarch failed to withstand. From 8.9 million spiritual power, Australith climbed up even higher to 9.2 million. It is ridiculous that such a powerful move can actually be used twice in a row. And this time, God Tree doubts that he could effectively guard again. This time, the scale and power emanating from the new attack looked and felt a lot bigger. The pure spiritual power needed to even manifest this thing was ridiculous. To prepare for what's about to come, Yuziu, with half of his body torn up, beckoned the earth element to build him the best earth shield that he could muster. The Destruction Beast was living up to his title with the onslaught as extinction-level beams. Now he's really in a pinch. God Tree must find a way to tank the hit with just his most powerful defensive move available. The weight bearing down upon his barrier was enough to break even the strongest transcendent being, but Yuziu persevered. He cleverly angled the earthen formation to the perfect angle to eventually redirect the destructive beam once again. This time, it went up into the air. Australith did not mind that at all. This overpowered bug has a ton of techniques in his seemingly unlimited bag of tricks. Right now, it's ghouls coming out from inside his body. Every single one of these ghouls was the same as the anomalous red shadow beast that he summoned to give Nine Tails a tough time. Now, all of them are swarming the injured and spent God Tree as fast as they can. Overwhelming him with numbers when he was this exhausted was the right call, but the God Tree is not alone in this fight. Coming from behind was the Flame Princess herself, Xiaoqing. She just arrived on time to act as reinforcement for her master. The Flame Princess did not even waste a single second and pulled out her blazing flame sword, overflowing with burning spiritual energy. One slash has dashed away the lives of countless red shadow beasts, effectively foiling Australisk's plan to overwhelm the God Tree with numbers. This slash was not just your ordinary slash too. It was explosive to the point of plunging the heart of the city with hellfire in all directions. An attack of that level was just a one and done. Shi Yaoqing has evaporated her blade in one go, but easily neutralized the immediate threat. Even the great flame sword developed by the Spiritual Power Research Institute can only withstand one full power strike of hers. She's going to need a better weapon. The broadcast of the fight stayed up even with all the destruction. The human media team is the real MVP. Because of them, everyone saw just how powerful the Flame Princess really was. She came to back up her master, but she also came bearing news that the higher-ups are planning to launch a spiritual missile here any second now. God Tree figured as much, but the launch of a missile in this position would only mean one thing. At that moment, Yu Ziyu just thought of a plan so ridiculous that it might just work if done properly. He asked Shi Yaoqing if there's any way for him to contact and speak directly to the higher-ups, to the man in charge of the entire Federation operation. A few moments later, the word quickly traveled to the office of the Federation head. He could not believe the words coming out of his associate's mouth. The God Tree wanted to talk. Shi Yaoqing gave Yu Ziyu the device to contact the leader of the Federation as he has something to say, and that foolish leader must hear him out loud and clear. The head still could not believe that he's talking with the supreme enemy of humanity just a few months ago, but it really was the Demon Tree's voice. Yu Ziyu cut straight to the chase. If he's being honest, dealing with a transcendent being nearing the Fifth Order is more than just extremely challenging, and they are going to need to work together here. Shi Yaoqing's flames were still raging on, effectively hiding what they were doing from the sharp sight of the overpowered bug. But she knows that this fire alone won't be enough to buy enough time for the God Tree to do his thing. So, she decided to tag in for the 1 versus 1. Activating Inferno Butterfly commanded the raging flames from all around the area to coalesce into a tsunami that burns down anything it comes across. She is strong, but her flames were not strong enough to deal significant damage to someone as powerful as the Destruction Beast. After swiping the flames away, Australis retorted that after dealing with a bizarre tree, maybe it is time to deal with humans now. Shi Yaoqing gave that attack her all and it did not even leave a scratch, a burn mark, or anything like that. In the middle of the burning heart of Jia City is a mystery whether Shi Yaoqing survived the attempt to buy time against the Destruction Beast. On the Federation headquarters, the leader patiently listened to the God Tree's demands, but he couldn't wrap his head around such a ridiculous request. Yu Ziyu retorted that this is what the Federation head have always wanted anyway. They were just hastening the process a little bit. The odd request would still be a win for humanity, but the head warned the God Tree that he better not regret making the call. Yu Ziyu replied that it won't be a problem. In his entire life, he will never do anything that he will ever regret. Back in the action, it looks like Shi Yaoqing was still in one piece, though a little bit worse for wears after trying to distract Australith for just a few more seconds. She had to admit that the level of this enemy is too high. It was just too powerful that even think about defeating the overpowered bug is absurd. But she must give her all to buy even just another second for her master. In order to do that, she must stay at the top of her game. She finally busted out her butterfly wings made of pure scorching heat. Seeing this form that was quite reminiscent to an insect like him, Australith laughed in amusement, praising Shi Yaoqing for being quite remarkable for a mere human. She was not messing around though. Shi Yaoqing might just be buying time, but she was going to go all out in order to do that. The Flame Princess dove down with the might of her blazing spiritual power in full display. She lit up the entire city in the colors of fire. Flying up into the air, you can see that when she wills it, the Flame Princess could wipe out cities all by herself. But she was only trying to do so because anything less would be ineffective against a monster at the level of the Destruction Beast. She was exhausted with little to no spiritual power in the tank. To make matters worse, the The purple tendrils came out of the smoke to snatch her out from the skies. If there is something that the destruction beast hates with a passion, it's humans buzzing around like flies. It doesn't take a fight expert to evaluate if this is bad. Her position was abysmal with nowhere to go. She was almost certainly done for if not for a powerful force launching out from a distance and heading for Jia City at breakneck speeds. Of course, it was the culmination of human transcendent studies, their new and improved spiritual missile. Australia has no knowledge of what that thing coming for him was. He has no concept of just how hard humans tried to perfect their craft after their defeat from the God Tree's hands. Just to secure the plan even further, strong roots started bearing down on the destruction beast's whole body. God Tree has perfectly timed his action to slowly choke out every joint in the bug's body in order to prevent any movements. No matter how much Australith struggled, God Tree's binding was just too tight and secure to shake off in just a few seconds. While he was trapping the destruction beast, Yuziyu has also stolen Xiao Qing away from the enemy's tendrils. She needs to hurry up and get out of this place now. Unable to move and overconfident in his defensive capabilities, Australith boasted that something like a human-made toy cannot destroy him and the only one who'll die here is the God Tree. That's where he was entirely wrong. No one said that the missile was coming down to destroy him. Yuziyu just wrapped him up so he could stay put and watch closely. The God Tree's roots reached for the heavens above while the light of the incoming ballistic missile filled the entire area. In the heart of Jia City, the God Tree accepted the pure spiritual power extracted from the transcendent people of humanity in the form of a missile. Even the overpowered bug could not understand what's happening. He thought he was the target of the attack after all. But no, this plan was the culmination of conflict. What was made for him will belong solely to him. This is God Tree's brief union with humans. The God Tree roared with a mixture of pain and the feeling of newfound strength coursing throughout his body. You see, instead of nuking down the whole area, the spiritual missile did not cause any destruction this time around. There have been too many explosions, and this one is different. This one was not on the list of the possibilities in the destruction beast's head. Instead of a destructive boom, it was more like a controlled but sudden burst of spiritual power coalescing into a single point in the heart of Jia City. After all the lights faded and all that's left was the dust of what just happened, Yuziyu stood firm, still in one piece. All Australith knows was that the missile was not your run-of-the-mill weapon. It brought the God Tree's power on a different level compared to before. Feeling the renewed power in his branches, roots, and entire body, Yuziyu could not help but admit that humans are indeed the most troublesome creatures. His body is healed up. It was like he was restored back to his prime self in combat form. No, he has become better and stronger by a mile. The destruction beast undoubtedly sensed that change. He was the closest one near the God Tree after all. But Australith refused to take this as a legitimate threat. In his point of view, depending on insignificant humans is a hateful and shameful act. But the God Tree was in this war to win it all. He's going to take the most reasonable edge he could get and run away with it. Just like now, with the help of the man-made weapon, he has been empowered to the point of being able to block a point-blank beam from a fourth-order transcendent powerhouse. He did not just block it, he freaking caught it with his strong hands. And as if he was playing baseball, he threw it right back to where it came from, the destruction beast's ugly bug face. Australith managed to dodge that one, but this is not looking good for the overpowered wingless moth. This beam, just like the ones that came before it, contained a powerful detonation that could raise a significant portion of the city. And the God Tree just used it as a power play, a bait to conceal his next move to come in and take a literal bite out of the enemy. This actual attack landed without any resistance. He caught the destruction beast off guard. And this bug would pay the price for inattentiveness. To combo from that vicious bite, God Tree decided to deal some critical damage up close and personal with willow leaf flying blades. His sharp wooden teeth were holding the enemy in place while the more destructive part of the attack was coming straight from his mouth. Getting hit in this distance would be catastrophic. Australith willed all of his muscles to move away from the attack, and he somewhat succeeded. He managed to break free from the sinking teeth, but still got grazed by the main strike. This willow-leaf flying blades was on a whole other level. It damn near cut the entirety of Ji-Out City in half with its sharpness. The Destruction Beast survived the ordeal despite being caught in a trap. He's a little worse for wear, but he's still breathing. He was not only alive, but the overpowered bug was also supremely pissed off. He was supposed to be the stronger being here. That was Australith's next big mistake. He chose to yap angrily instead of focusing on the enemy's movements. God Tree was already coming in with a meteor punch from above. It seems like every single move that Yuziu makes at this point would be enough to delete the remains of Ji-Out City little by little. Australith roared in pain and shame as he kept on getting outplayed every turn. He could not even retaliate even just a little. Not only that, the injuries from all the grazed shots to the full-powered blows were catching up to his beaten body. From all the injury that Godtree was giving away for free, another surprise was revealed. He thought that this bug was done with transformations, but no, it was just wearing a mask. Hidden behind is an ugly mug only a mother could love. Seeing that he's already getting trash-talked, Australith decided to discard all the vestigial parts to reveal his true form. He still thinks that he'll come out on top after all is said and done. What was hidden inside that bug cosplay was a demonic being with an otherworldly aura. The apex predator, a monster of the shadows. This is the real Destruction Beast. Godtree's strongest foe is revealed the final card, going full power. But his spirit power is constantly decreasing. The energy from the spirit missile is not an organic energy obtained from a living body after all. This is a race against time. And if you know Yuziu, you know that he'll try his hardest to make the most of this limited time frame. The Destruction Beast will not sit idly too. Both of their lives are on the line. Both of them will fight like it. With both of their full potential in effect, it has become an all-out brawl for two of the most powerful beings on the planet. Now that Australith has shed his bug skin, it opened up room for some new attacking tools like a claw. This claw was as fast as lightning and as sharp as it was fast. It tore through Godtree's thick and supposedly indestructible body. Of course, Yuzi would not lose most of his left side prowess without exchanging for a damage trade. He took out one of Australith's limbs as revenge. That was made possible by his 9 wood arboreal roots that altered his stems into a whole new different beast. With a new form comes new defensive skills for Australith. Now he has a magnetic shield that could repel powerful physical attacks. The Destruction Beast has also picked up a few tricks after consuming the Leviathan Monarch. He could command water to rage as a tsunami. Godtree has the picture-perfect counter for that though, the ability to freeze everything in sight. Ice Age. Suddenly, the heart of Ji-Out City has turned into a frozen tundra. It was like a gigantic ice sculpture of a world-ending calamity. Water did not work, so Australith immediately jumped to his next attacking option, using his grating voice for a sonic attack. This time, Godtree chose to bust out a defensive move of his own, activating crystallization to weather the storm of sound waves. It was just enough to stave off the more destructive property of the sonic attack. The surrounding buildings, the few that were left, were not safe from the collateral damage. Despite all the chaos, Godtree was not forgetting his mission to drive this Destruction Beast out of the city dead or alive. That was what Lil Panda wanted to do. This was the perfect moment for a surprise attack coming from below the ground with the use of Yuziu's Earth Element manipulation. That one really hurts just based on Australith's growl. And now, Godtree has enough strength to coil his branches on literal buildings to use them as blunt weapons. It was like Yuziu was beating up the beast with the ruins that Australith tore up in the first place. Little Panda watched it all too. In his cuddly little face, the usual cocky grin has been wiped out. It was replaced with the worry for his boss. That building attack has taken off the Destruction Beast's entire left arm. Australith thinks that what the Godtree has been doing and saying are ridiculous. Yuziu was protecting humans when he only managed to grow to this stage through killing other creatures as well. When you look at it from the monster's perspective, God Tree doesn't have the qualifications to be posturing here. But he was misunderstanding one vital thing. Everything the God Tree has done up till now was never in service for humans. He was just doing this because this is what his comrade wants. He's taking action for the ninth brother of the family. And this is a revenge match for harming one of his people. The debt must be paid back in blood. For the destruction beast, words like comrade or family don't mean a thing. It's a stupid word. It's so ridiculous that he cannot hold his mocking laughter back at all. He thought that the God Tree's motivation and actions were simply arrogance. Coming all the way here for a death match was a big mistake. Australith wanted to make you regret everything in just one more attack. A spiritual energy bomb, just like the ones that came before it. This one was different. It was on a scale that has never been seen before. The energy ball looked like a burgeoning dark pearl in the middle of the cursed city. Ninetails saw this and immediately handed down the order for everyone to retreat to a safer distance. Shi Yaoqing was also near the battlefield, and the pressure from that incoming attack made her afraid for her master. Meanwhile, the Mita team wanted to fly a bit closer. They might just melt if they go in just an inch too close. The battle is reaching its final stage. How will the gears of fate turn? No one knows, but all eyes are on the historic battle of the world's most powerful beings. Every human tuning in, whether from a busy metropolitan area or in the countryside, only had one question in mind: will humanity survive? All their hopes were pinned on the God Tree, the beast that they used to call the Demon Tree. And that hope was getting smaller and smaller as Australith's attack grew bigger and bigger. The beast himself asserted that this would be the final attack of this battle. He wanted Yu to take his pitiful mindset and die. Using his remaining good arm, the destruction beast finally unleashed the unholy attack into the world for the God Tree to stop. Yu knew that no matter what, he must block this attack with everything that he's got. Both he and the enemy only had one good arm remaining, and God Tree would do his hardest to use his to stop this celestial level attack. Just the sheer weight of the sinister bomb was enough to crush and disintegrate the physical materials near it. Australith poured his everything into this one last attack. He was banking on ending this tiresome ordeal once and for all. It's not looking good for our boy. His regeneration just could not keep up with the rate of constant destruction. It was burning his body badly. The media and the people did not expect this. God Tree was showing them what it really means to protect something by blocking an unblockable attack. The Federation and its leaders were betting on him to not lose this clash of wills. His carrying the spiritual power of humanity after all. They didn't know how it started, but everyone watching this scene could not help but cheer for the God Tree to beat the odds. Shi Yaoqing might be on the field, but she could not do anything. This level of battle is above her pay grade at the moment. Qinggong and Thorn could only look from the outskirts of the city where it would be relatively safe to observe. They all believe in their master with all their hearts. As for Yu himself, he believed more than anyone does. This perseverance against the most powerful attack unleashed by the Beast of Destruction was not cutting it. Australith's unshakable confidence was starting to shake. The massive bomb made of pure spiritual power started getting heavier and gaining momentum, planting God Tree's feet deep in the broken pavements. Australith refused to give in after all that boasting from earlier. But the calm in God Tree's voice was unbending. He steeled himself to never lose and never die. He will come out on top, and he will continue living the good life. And after that, he will get everyone to leave this cursed place, for that is what the little panda wanted. Australith was tired of listening to the tireless insistence of selflessness. He wanted to prove that his ideology and the world he wanted to make are much more important. So important that you would gladly erase a massive piece of land in a brilliant display of destruction. After a moment of silence, it looked like the massive spiritual energy bomb has finally run out of steam. The destruction beast laughed like a lunatic, believing that he has finally destroyed the biggest pain in his neck. Just as Australith was about to drag Yu's mission and arrogance to the mud, A surprise visit from that familiar blue orb peered through the dust that has not even settled yet. The destruction beast's jaw fell in shock. This was impossible. That was his most powerful attack. All of that was running through his brain. But now that Australith has given his all and failed to kill, it's about time for God Tree's turn. He opened the killing blow by using the most overpowered ability he recently obtained from the Divine Flower, the Temporal Pause. The next thing you know, he was using 9-wood arboreal roots with his few remaining unserviceable limbs capable of attacking. Australith was stuck in time, and he had absolutely no answer for that kind of binding. He was like a sitting duck ready to get stabbed from multiple points. God Tree pushed forth with intensity. This is it. This is his chance to be the one to end the war. Uziyu is not the type to let this chance go. With all the strength that he has left, he was not taking any half measures. He beat, stabbed, slashed, and even slapped the overpowered bug up into the high heavens without mercy. Australith felt his body getting torn into shreds, being reduced to just a body, a head, and a couple of limbs. It looked painful. With the final strike of a golden and hardened root, everything is finally about to come into conclusion. It will be over. The mission that Little Panda started will be up to the boss to end. God Tree has been caught up with the emotion and sensation of dealing the final blow, the killing. He ultimately squished that destruction beast down to the ground like the disgusting bug that he is. Uziyu only caught his breath when the system notified him that the target's vitals have stopped. The glorious monster that the whole world feared has been reduced into nothing but a lifeless head without a body. The remains of this incorporeal beast in his final form started dissipating into nothing. God Tree took one final look at the mess that he made, the glorious conclusion of it all. Then his voice echoed throughout the entire city addressing Old Nine, the little panda. He wanted to be the one to break the news to his comrade that the battle is over, and they have won. They can finally go home now. The little guy knows it. Shi Yaoqing knows it. God Tree made the impossible happen. Above the decimated land of the cursed Ji City, the sun has begun to rise.